committee. This involves the plan by the Wynn Music Community Charter School to move its location from 164th Street and Edgecombe Avenue to a parking garage on 181st Street between Amsterdam and Audubon Avenues. There'll be a complete renovation of the parking garage in order to accommodate the school. They need a BSA variance because I believe schools are normally not allowed within commercial districts. So I'm hoping that we'll get a brief presentation about this plan, and then the environmental consultant will be addressing specifically the environmental issues concerning air quality, hazardous materials, and noise control. Amanda, you're on the call?
Yes, I am. Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Simon.
And Amber is also ready?
I'm here.
Excuse me?
I'm here.
Okay. All right. So, Amanda, you want to make some introductory remarks and then turn it over to Amber?
Sure, yes. That is correct. We are presenting the application for the Wynn Charter School tonight to locate at 506 West 181st Street. We are applying for a special permit at the Board of Standards and Appeals because schools are not permitted as of right in a C83 zoning district, but are permitted upon special permit. We have a brief presentation to show the proposed architectural plans. If you could allow Tom Gluck to share his screen, he can share the presentation with you.
And if you're presenting, could you show yourselves as well? If you don't
I
mind?
sure can.
Oh, shoot. What the hell was it? Okay.
Does
I
he
now
want to
have
share
a-
the screen now, or is he sharing the screen a little later?
He's going to,
I'd like to try to share now.
Okay,
It just
so-
says host disabled participant screen sharing.
Okay, that's what it was just on a second ago, so follow me. There it goes.
Okay.
Paula, do you have the presentation?
No, let me make him a co-host. We have to do the same thing we did with Ross. I don't have these things in advance. Hold on. What's the gentleman's name so I can make him a co-host?
Tom Gluck.
Okay. Let me
It's
just
under Amanda, actually.
Oh,
Yeah.
Amanda.
Oh.
Okay.
let me just mention for the
Agree.
benefit of the committee members that
Let me
that
make all
will-
the Amandas then co-hosts, because I don't know which one it's in.
let me just mention to the committee members that what we're looking for tonight is just to come up with some recommendations if we feel necessary to pass on to the Land Use Committee for its resolution, which it will be doing at its June meeting. So we're technically not doing a resolution tonight. All right, Sally, stop yawning.
And it's only just started.
Both accounts are prepared, so just let me know when you're ready so I can hit share screen.
I think I might
There
be
you go.
in now.
Yes, you are.
Okay. Okay, so can I just want to confirm, can everyone see the screen?
Yep.
Okay. So the project site,
Is there any way to make it larger?
I can, I think I've got it as big as I can make it.
Okay.
It's as big as I can make it on my screen, so.
Okay.
Um,
And Tom, are you part of the environmental firm?
Sorry, I'm Tom Gluck. I'm the architect
Oh, okay.
for the Wynn Community Music Charter School.
Okay, go ahead.
So the site is on 181st Street between Amsterdam and Audubon. It's the parking garage, existing building, parking garage, 4-story building that we will be completely renovating and adding onto. This is just an image of the building itself. You can see clearly where the historic facade ends, and that will be our setback level. And then the building will go up from there, but set back the 15 feet from the street. I'm not going to get into zoning stuff unless that's what focus. I don't think. Yep. So I'm just going to quickly give you an overview. We also have the overall site plan. This may come in handy later for some of the discussions. But just very briefly, I just want to outline the building. The charter school uses music as its core mission, as a way of kind of focusing the kids on primary education. It's K through 5 right now. And so it's an unusual for a charter school because it has, kids learn music twice a day, and they have it's really the core of their program. And so they have a very large theater space at the entry level. Done lots of charter schools with gymatoriums and cafeterias and that dual is, but this really has a full 400 seat theater, which will be the performance space for the kids as they perform throughout the year. Just quickly in terms of distribution of program, entry is on 181st Street. There'll be administration and offices, the main theater, and then below the bulk of the music classrooms. Kindergarten would be in the back of the building because there's windows down here. The rear yard is low, so they have their own outdoor space. And then as you move up on the second floor, you have 2 first grade classrooms, the cafeteria, and then it starts to kind of set itself up kind of normally 2 classrooms for second grade, 2 for third, 2 for fourth, 2 for fifth, and then a gym on the roof. I don't think I'm going to get into too much detail about all the plans, but just to give you a sense, this is the ground floor plan, the entry, admin offices, and you can see the whole space is really given over to a full stage and a full auditorium. So I think that's enough, and I'm happy to answer. Focus.
No, you should give us a little more about the outdoor play space.
Okay, so we have, and we've been working on this carefully. We have, 3 locations for outdoor play space. Actually, I'm going to go back to the section. I think it might be easier to see. So one is in the 10-foot existing rear yard off of the kindergarten classrooms. They have direct access to the rear yard here. And I'm sure Amber will get into this, but we have done line of sight studies, and we have a 15-foot, I think 15.5-foot tall wall that screens that from line of sight to the neighbors. Then the next location for recess is here on the 4th floor, which is the current roof of the parking garage. And cars do park up here today. So there's a space off of the 5th grade classrooms, and it needs a very low wall. I think it's like 6.5, 7.5 feet to screen line of sight to the residential buildings. And then at the top of the building, in the front on the setback, is the recess area. And I think for this one, I will jump to the plan. If I'm moving too quickly, you have questions, please just let me know. That's the 4th floor terrace. So the terrace, which would be the primary recess space for the kids, there's an indoor gymnasium, which is enclosed. The outdoor play space is on 181st Street, and it also is screened along the property line. And then there's a fence here to keep balls and those kinds of things in, but also provide fire department there access in and out so they can land off of fire trucks and get in to the building in the event that they need to.
Background of the logic and move.
Okay. Who's talking?
This is new to me, so
My video.
you could tell us a little bit about the school, how big it is, and also why you're moving from your other location.
Sure. Charlie, are you on? Do you want to, we have the executive director. I can answer these questions that he might,
Hey, Tom, I'm here.
okay. You want to just take that?
Yep, I do. Hi, all. First off, just thank you for having us. This is now the third committee we've spoken with, and we're speaking with the Education Committee on Monday. So we really just appreciate you and all of your thoughts on throughout these meetings. So the school is in our third year of existence. We are currently co-located in a DOE building down on 164th. And we have a short-term co-location, as in we were supposed to be leaving at the end of this year. We are working with the DOE to extend that for another year or two while we can complete the construction of this. But based on the growth of the school, like of WIN, we would not be able to stay in the co-location or to be fully enrolled. We are a K-5 chartered school, currently K-3. When we are fully enrolled at K-5, we will have 324 kids.
All right, Sally, does that answer your question?
This is Barbara. I have some questions too.
Can they wait till they finish the presentation?
Sure, I'm writing the questions down as he presents. It's fine.
All right,
can
thank
wait.
you. Okay. All right, so Mr. Gluck, did you have anything? Could you just go back to that terrace on the 4th floor?
This one, and the one in the rear, or the one on Amsterdam?
No, I thought the one on the 4th floor is on 181st.
The one on the 5th floor is on 181st.
Oh, and that's the larger one?
It is.
And maybe Amber will get into this, but maybe Amber will discuss the noise barriers or noise mitigation that will be employed for these spaces.
Yeah, and yeah, Amber, do you want to jump in? I can
Okay.
point around with the plans.
I don't want to cut you off. Are you finished?
No, yep, I think, and I'm finished with my presentation, and I'm happy to help answer questions. And I'm sharing my screen, so it might help if I point when Amber starts talking. But you guys let me know.
All right. So, Amber, could you address the 3 issues that are germane to our committee, namely noise, hazardous materials, and air quality?
Sure. So I guess I'll start with noise. So we have done a detailed noise analysis that includes basically ambient noise readings to determine the level of building attenuation that's required here, basically the thickness of the windows and the walls. And then on top of that, we've considered individually each of the outdoor spaces, and we've evaluated various receptors. So for the rear terraces, we've evaluated the building that's currently under construction to the, to the east, as well as the residential. And we've done line of sight studies as well as like DEP provided calculations for playground noise impact to determine essentially the height of the enclosures in order to preclude impact on those. So that's been conducted and submitted to DEP. As Tom had mentioned, a 15-foot enclosure for the cellar level terrace. And then for the 4th floor level terrace, we've identified basically a 7-foot. And just so you know, the attenuation required based on the distances was relatively minor. So that's going to be accomplished for the cellar and the 4th floor. But we have to evaluate both the attenuation, but then above that, the direct line of sight, you need that distance to be enough that the noise basically dissipates to an acceptable level per DEP standards and seeker standards. For the 5th floor terrace, we basically, and we've also just, we've also specified if that couldn't be accomplished feasibly with, certain fence heights areas where they would be, there would be no access. And for the 5th floor terrace, that we had identified a small portion of no access, basically set back from the east. And then I believe it off the top of my head, I think it was a 20-foot high fence enclosure to preclude impact, because this is higher than anything surrounding it, with the exception of that building that's to be developed to the east, 20-foot fence. So
Okay, but DEP is currently, according to,
Get away.
according to your April 16th letter, DEP was currently doing an analysis of these noise issues. Do you know, is that review still underway, or has it been completed?
So the terraces had been redesigned slightly. There was some architectural changes. So DEP is reviewing the current noise analysis that was submitted to them. When was that submitted? I believe beginning of
20th,
April?
April 20th.
April 20th. So that will be reviewed though, and if any modifications need to be made, you know, we would incorporate that into the design.
Now, there is a residential building directly to the south, isn't there?
Yeah, we considered that.
Yes.
We did consider that.
And so the fourth floor terrace would be facing that residential building, maybe more than one building. And so the mitigation that's being provided is the 7-foot wall. Is that correct?
A 7-foot wall to and a certain level of attenuation provided for that wall. I don't have it open, but off the top of my head, I believe it was somewhere around 5 dBA of attenuation for that wall.
This is the outline of the residential building to the south that you're referring to.
Yes. Okay.
And here's the fourth floor terrace. So there are windows. That's why this wall could do, if this wall with this height would preclude line of sight, we'd be over the top of their building.
Yeah, but directly to the west of that building, I believe, is yet another residential building that could conceivably be impacted by any noise coming from that terrace.
It's in the same, yeah, you're correct. And it's in
Yes.
the same line as this, and this wall wraps around the corner. So
Right.
it only gets better as it moves further. I can go to the site plan maybe, if that would help. So there's this residential building and this residential
Oh, I
building.
see. Oh, okay.
And the wall we're talking about on the fourth floor,
Oh, I see. Okay.
does that make sense? And it wraps here too, just to protect against neighbors even further to the west.
Okay, but Amber, for common people such as us, when you say that there's a certain level of attenuation, X dBs, what does that mean?
It essentially means the material and the thickness of the enclosure, and that it would have to meet a certain level of sound absorption or deflection. And you know, the level that we've identified can pretty much be accomplished through various materials. It's not a very high level of attenuation, just based on the distance
Okay, and this
from
is,
the source to the receptor.
and that's the material and thickness of the wall.
Of the enclosure of the, whether it's a fence or a
Screen or a fence or a
screen,
wall.
right?
Yeah, well, I mean, a fence might not be very thick at all, I know.
There's certain products that can be, you know, there's certain products that can be attached to fencing to ensure that attenuation's met.
And the kids would be out there, would you figure how many hours per day?
Charlie, do you want to maybe take a stab at this?
Yeah. So and actually, Tom, can you go to the 5th floor, or actually that's fine. So if you see there's an enclosed gym in the back of it. So most or all of the gym classes will be happening in there. So the exterior play area would only be used when there's recess and the gym is being used by a separate class, or for like special occasions. Personally, I want to set up some sort of like staff working area that's outside somewhere in that area. And so I can't answer the exact amount of time in a given day, but the majority of the play time or like moving around time will be in the gymnasium. And then the reason that we have that the kindergarten classes down by that small outdoor space is that it allows the youngest kids to have more outdoor space, more accessibly, which is also less impactful to 181st.
Right. Okay, but all things being equal, probably kids would not be outside more than a couple of hours per day, I would assume.
Oh, so it would probably, by the time we're fully scaled, the most amount of time would be 90 minutes a day for recess, and that would be the max.
Okay.
And Charlie, if I'm right, that would be when they're shared up here. This is dedicated kindergarten, and they have recess only 1 or 2 times a day. So down here in the rear yard, it would be, I don't want 45 minutes, something like that.
That's a great point, Tom. So it would be 30 minutes in that back area where the hand is right now, and then 60 minutes for the 5th floor one, because they
This
both
one up here.
would be happening at the same time.
So I'm sorry, 90 minutes for kindergarten and 60 minutes for the older kids?
Sorry, no. So like the general thinking would be like 30 minutes for recess, and so we would chunk the entire K to 5 like school into like 3 different periods. But to Tom's point, the kindergartens have their own area. So the kindergartens would likely be having outdoor recess in that area from, let's say, 11:30 to 12, while the rest of the school is having it 11:30 to 12 and 12 to 12:30. Hour of time.
Could somebody please control their dog? Put the dog on mute. Oh my God. Okay. Anything else? From my point of view, I think the major problem with noise is noise intruding into the building from the heavy traffic and the fire department across the street.
Yeah.
And so, Amber, you're addressing that issue, I assume?
We've evaluated that. So, we did several monitoring locations, one at grade in the rear yard, one about where that 4th floor terrace is, and then one at the ground level in front facing 181st Street. And during those noise monitoring periods, there was FDNY vehicles, so all of that ambient noise was captured. And then actually, in addition to that, what we did was we took those levels and we actually, for any facades that are directly adjacent to any playground space, we added noise generated by the students to ensure that that's also attenuated to an acceptable interior level.
All right, that sounds good to me. All right, anything more that you'd like to say about noise?
Tom, actually, do you want to speak about how the building is extra soundproofed?
Well, we have two. There's the OITC rating of the windows and the wall attenuation. So noise on the outside doesn't interfere with the kids inside. And then because this is a music school, it's actually one of the few charter schools I've had where we actually have an acoustician on board who's making sure. And again, this is less probably an issue for this committee, but we have instrument rooms and rehearsal rooms and orchestra rooms, and we want to make sure that all those sounds are very much controlled and aren't disruptive internally. So we have a pretty good team assembled for this project.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, Amber, what's our next topic?
Hazardous materials, and I'm just pulling up the section here. So initially there was a soil vapor study that was done. And then we had submitted, not in this April submission, but in the previous submission, a work plan to do a full, basically a work plan for DEP review and approval for a full phase 2 investigation that included soil samples, groundwater samples, I believe. So it was 10 soil borings, temporary monitoring wells, in addition to those soil vapor samples that were already completed. And DEP had approved that work. So the environmental engineer went out and actually completed that work. And to date, a phase 2 remedial investigation report detailing the findings of that have been submitted to DEP for review. And the phase 2 report, which I have here, they evaluated, I believe they identified metals that were detected above regulatory thresholds. And although the soil vapor did not show anything above thresholds because this is a sensitive use, they had also recommended vapor mitigation, and I believe that was in the form, maybe Carla, you could correct me if
It's a
I'm wrong.
vape, I think it's a vape, 20 mil vapor barrier,
Vapor barrier.
and which we would be putting in down here.
So this would be under the slab that you would put in a barrier, an extra barrier?
Exactly.
And I'm sorry, how did you describe that barrier?
It's a 20 mil thick vapor barrier. So it's a system that of very, 20 mil thick plastic that is a system of joint sealers and seam seal tape that then creates a full sheet and is terminated at the perimeters. And then there's a whole protocol for how penetrations like pipes and things get sealed. Fairly standard and effective way of containing any issues below grade.
And you don't have to do anything to capture that vapor and disperse it outside of the building or something like that?
So I mean, Amber can talk about this, but if you have high enough thresholds, then that is a concern. But
Right.
this is, since there was so little detected and there isn't a buildup of gases,
Right.
so sometimes that is required, but under much worse conditions than this.
Right.
Yeah, this is what they call a passive system.
Oh,
So
good. Okay.
there's no
Right, 'cause-
venting of the vapors.
All right, because I'm sorry, what was that phrase just now?
It's just a passive system, they call it. So there's no venting of the vapors.
Oh,
It's just
venting, right, venting.
yeah.
Yeah, we have had that in a couple of other, not that this is a brownfield, but we have had that requirement imposed in a couple of other locations in our area.
Steve, this is Kevin Williams from Equity Environmental. So what you're referring to in terms of the venting is a subsurface depressurization system.
Yes.
Which if the vapor encroachment condition exceeded certain thresholds in terms of soil gas, you would be required to pipe through the building, but it didn't rise to that level.
Now, is it? I assume this vapor is the result of an underground gasoline tank or something that was in the parking garage
Next
connected
door,
to gasoline?
there was a previous gas station, so it's most likely remnant. You know, that site was remediated, but you have off gassing, and just fill in New York City often has to have a vapor barrier, even in what some would regard as the cleanest of areas, but most likely it's related to the adjacent gas station that you have slow dispersion of remnant PC or remnant related gas, gasoline, minor spills and that sort of thing. But luckily, it actually it was not a particularly high level of contamination that was present.
So you're referring to the gas station that previously occupied the site that's now under construction along Amsterdam Avenue, between
Where the hotel is.
where the hotel and
Post hotel.
mixed use
Yes.
building is being constructed. So there was in fact some seepage of vapors from that site onto your site.
Presumably,
Yeah.
presumably that's what it's very difficult, in areas that have been developed over a long period of time, given there's a long range of uses to dissect, the responsible entity. But without dwelling into the concentrations to too much degree, I'm assuming that's, the need for the vapor barrier, which, by the way, pretty much any site in New York City and in any neighborhood, such a 20 mil would be required. So I think it's relatively benign concentrations for the most part.
Okay, and who was just speaking?
That's Kevin Williams from Equity Environmental. I'm Amber's colleague.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Steve, I know there are committee questions. Is now a good time or is there another part we're going over?
Well, are there questions that relate to hazardous materials?
No, I have questions relating to some of the noise and some of the other factors.
Okay, can we just let them finish the last segment on
Sure,
air quality?
sure.
Okay, all right, so Amber, air quality?
Sure. So air quality was basically a two-part analysis. So the
I'm
first
sorry,
part was identifying.
I'm sorry, one
So-
second. One second before you go on. Was there anything more that you guys wanted to speak of on hazardous materials?
I guess I would just say that based on what's been identified in the phase 2 remedial investigation report, the environmental engineer that had prepared that is coordinating with DEP, and they will be preparing what's called a remedial action plan, detailing all of the remedial activities that would be employed here for their review.
Okay, normally we get a chance to, are these being done in conjunction with the Mayor's Office of Environmental Remediation?
No, in this case, it's DEP is the reviewing agency.
Because normally we get a chance to see these investigation reports and the remedial action plans. Would you be able to forward those to us?
The remedial action plan is not yet prepared, but I can forward you the phase 2.
Yeah, please. Okay. All right. So, all right. I appreciate that. Normally we review these things in conjunction with brownfield cleanup plans, but again, this has not been designated as a brownfield. Okay. So we're now finished. Is that correct with hazardous materials?
Finished with hazardous materials. So air quality. I'm just scrolling down so I have reference to that section. So we did basically twofold. So one is identifying any potential industrial users that where they're doing any kind of activity that would emit industrial process emissions. And the second part of that was evaluating the building heating and cooling and the emissions related to the school building heating and cooling and impact on adjacent uses. So in this case, we actually, for the HVAC analysis and emissions associated with that, because you're looking at buildings that are of equal or greater height, we had looked at the adjacent hotel mixed use building to the east, and it goes by the gross square foot of the school to evaluate whether or not there would be potential impact on that adjacent hotel use. And basically it's screened out of having any impact on that building. And the second part, in terms of the industrial search, there was no industrial uses that were identified. I mean, this is mainly, as you all know, commercial uses, no industrial air toxics that were identified there.
Okay. All right. So so basically the building, according to your analysis, would have no impact on the in terms of air quality on the surrounding uses. You checked, I assume you took into account the residential buildings as well as this new office building next door.
Yeah, the residential building, because it's of lesser height, you know, and the way that the emissions associated with HVAC systems disperse, doesn't have to be considered. But the adjacent building, because it's above it, was considered, and that looks at meteorological data and a number of different factors, and it essentially models that to make sure with downwash and everything that there would be no impact there.
So maybe I can just for the committee to understand, there are basically
I'm sorry, who is this now?
Sorry, this is Tom Gluck.
Okay.
And my name comes up as Amanda, but I'm not an Amanda. The HVAC units for the whole building are all located, and the bulk of them, 4 of them are located here behind the screen walls, and the one smaller one for the gym is located here. So you can see that we identified that this is the residential window of the neighbors to the south, and we're well above them, which is why Amber was saying that.
Okay. All right, that's helpful. All right, so that's it for air quality?
That's it for air quality.
Excuse me?
That's it. That's for
Okay,
air quality. That's it.
okay. Okay, I just have one question before I then call upon Barbara. On the environmental assessment statement, and I must admit that I have not read the whole document, so when I get a chance to read the whole document, I may yet have other questions, so I hold that in reserve. But there's a box here that refers to historic and cultural resources, in which the question is, does the proposed project site or an adjacent site contain any architectural and/or archaeological resource that is eligible for or has been designated as a New York City landmark, interior landmark, scenic landmark? And you checked off yes. What did you have in mind?
Hold on, let me see. Yeah, we're required to basically screen this with the Landmarks Preservation Commission. I'm just at this section here. No archaeological significance, no historic or cultural significance was LPC's determination. Let me just go up to the form and see what you're referring to.
Yeah, it's question number 6. On the part 2, the technical analysis.
Question 6, does a project site or... You know, that might have actually been, that might have been an error.
Yes.
Because
Okay.
LPC did, yeah, LPC did review this,
Okay.
and it says that right below, so that will be unchecked.
Right. Okay. And as I pointed out the other night at the Traffic and Transportation Committee, although somewhere in this document you indicate that the site is not within a business improvement district, in fact, it is within the Washington Heights Business Improvement District. And I do hope, as I suggested the other night, that you contact the executive director there and you introduce yourself to him and let him take you around to the neighboring businesses. But Barbara, you had a question?
A couple questions.
Hey, Barbara, I'm
Yes.
sorry. Before you start, Steve, can we do a stack? I think there are other people that have questions. I know I do. I don't know who else does from the committee.
Okay,
Hey,
well,
this is Catherine. I have a question as well, so if you can add me.
okay.
I'd appreciate
All right,
it.
so it'll be Barbara, Darrell, and then Catherine.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. I have a few questions.
Yes, go
First
ahead.
is, first of all, I should tell you I'm a retired teacher and staff developer for the Board of Ed. So I'm sort of looking at these plans from the standpoint of an educator. First of all, when we talked about noise, I'm sort of less concerned about the noise the kids make as the noise that will impinge on the school, because 181st Street and also Amsterdam are extremely noisy for thoroughfares. And if you're familiar with a study that was done years ago about the Discovery School, when they switched the sides of the building of the classrooms, they switched, A to B, switched them. The reading scores of the kids that were put away from the subway, their reading scores jumped and the other kids declined precipitously. So I'm very concerned about the noise mitigation from the surrounding trucks that rumble and all of the noise on the street. Especially, there's a lot of screeching noise, a lot of boombox noise, a lot of, and so forth. How are you going to mitigate that very strongly in terms of the kids' attention spans?
Amber, can I handle that question?
Yeah.
So, Ms. Fraser, this is Kevin Williams from Equity Environmental. So, our firm specializes in noise readings. We handle charter schools all over the city. So there's a requirement that a 45 decibel interior be maintained in terms of noise exposure. And just so you know, that amounts to a modern low noise level washing machine or dishwashing machine in your kitchen. So the attenuation that we did readings, as Amber indicated, on 181st in the backyard and also on the roof of the existing building. We identified a 75 dB reading, and this is taken at the AM, the midday, and the PM period on a typical when it was a Wednesday or Thursday, one of the typical required traffic, times during the week.
What
It
month?
also overlapped with the fire department operating engines in the street, which is why
Yes.
we had some spikes in the readings. And
Yes.
so what we have to do is we have to apply the appropriate amount of window attenuation along with the masonry composition of the building to ensure that a 45 decibel interior is maintained at all times. This is required to be put on the plans. It's submitted to DOB, and it has to be compliant with those requirements. So the city is very, very strenuous in terms of maintaining a complete interior 45 decibel level of noise. So this is just part and parcel of building a community facility.
So first of all, I think that a fire engine heard from a roof is much more than 75 decibels.
So that's an exterior space and it doesn't have the same requirement. We're certainly not, the teachers have the advent of bringing children inside, the space where glass will attenuate the noise. So this notion that children would remain outdoors to be exposed to such noise, I think should be, disavowed, and there will be protocols required. We do have, as an extra, the sound of children playing alone exceeds 75 decibels.
Yes,
so their own
exactly.
voices are louder than the traffic actually on the street 5 stories below. As well, one of the things in terms of studying the propagation of noise is as it climbs up through the air, there's a reduction in decibels of 3 for every 30 to 60 feet. So
yes, I'm aware of that.
Yeah, so the exposure is a little bit less, but I think absolutely I would have a concern about children being outside, having sirens running from an ambulance. This is part of New York City life, schools throughout the urban environment, and I'm sure that wind would put children inside when they were exposed to high-pitched sound.
Well, I'm concerned about the classroom because the classroom, simply the attention span of a K through 5 is, as I said, as was that study done at this Discovery School at 218th and 10th Avenue showed that the reading scores were precipitously disrupted by the sound.
That's on an elevated rail that constantly has 15-minute interval trains, whereas we're talking about a fire department that maybe has one alarm a week at best.
Yeah, or the constant rumble of trucks on Amsterdam Avenue going down to the Henry Hudson.
We study this. It's part of the analysis. DEP won't allow the school if we don't attenuate noise. The glass is, we're talking about double pane and glazed, along with a huge masonry structure building with thick walls. It does in fact attenuate that noise, and we have in fact taken account of that noise in our studies. And our firm does over 100 readings a year, all throughout the city. And we are one of the #1 firms doing environmental assessments on charter schools. And yes, it's loud. That's why we're picking up the ambient traffic, and it's at 75 decibels, and that's pretty typical for a 4-lane busy commercial street in New York City. And so it will be quite silent on the inside.
That's the point. That's the point. Silent on the inside. Okay, my next question is this. I look at the 5th grade classroom, and that one goes out on the fourth floor terrace, correct?
Yes.
Okay, all right. So now that right, exactly. Now you intend that terrace is for outdoor activity, correct?
Well, so this one is not for recess like the other ones. This one we've dedicated to kindergarten. This one is for recess for the group, for the other grades. This might be a place where there was a science experiment, probably more. So this is not outdoor play, right adjacent to the classroom.
But that would only be available really for the 5th. It would only be available to other grades when 5th grade is either in theater or in lunch. because it would be
in-
completely disruptive to the 5th grade.
No, that's exactly right. This would be available to the 5th grade and then to the other grades during lunch, orchestra, and lunch, instrument, and chorus. And then there's art and science and PE.
Right, during
Okay.
electives. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
All right.
Now, the other question I had about the 5th grade classroom, how much of that wall between 5th and 4 and 4 there is window?
This?
That, yes. Is that window?
A lot. I mean, like this.
It is window.
Yes,
Okay, so
there's
that is,
lots
that
of
is,
daylight coming in there.
okay, because it's not clear that it's window.
No, you're
Okay,
right.
but
The drawing is not, you're absolutely right. The drawing's not
So it
clear, but
was-
it's the same window pattern as all the others.
Okay, it's not clear on the drawing. Okay,
You're
but that's
correct. You're
important. Okay.
Yes, it is.
All right, now the other question I have is on the 4th grade thing, you said it's only a 7 feet wall? That's-
You're talking about, no, the terrace in the
floor?
rear here, this terrace,
7
this
feet.
wall is 7 feet tall.
When you've got 5th graders, I think 7 feet is not enough for safety. All you have to do is have one 5th grader crawl on top of another and they're over the top. I do not feel that that is safe enough.
Yeah, so I should clarify. The 7-foot wall has to do with the requirement for the sound attenuation. So we need it to be that tall in order not for noise here not to impact the neighbors to the south. If
Right.
in fact we're using this for recess, then by New York City Department of Buildings requirements, we'll need a 10-foot fence like we have here. And then
Sure.
in cases we go further and put, depending if there'll be ball play or not, we put, actual mesh over the ceiling.
Sure.
So this 7 feet is prescribed for sound attenuation only. And then those other issues are going to depend on whether this is recess or, whether this is monitored class space. And that's something that the school is still trying to determine.
Yeah, but if it's any kind of activity back there, I really think 7 feet is not enough. Okay, my
Alright.
other thing is on the entrance. You're saying you have 230 students, right?
No.
181st Street, it's not that wide of a sidewalk. I think it's highly dangerous that at your entry point, you have one entry point. If you look at your entry point,
Yeah, it's here.
right, on 181st Street. That's a busy commercial street starting at 8 o'clock in the morning. I can't see how you're going to unload 230 students safely. What is your plan?
So we've talked about many of these issues with the transportation committee. And so a number of things that the school is looking at is staggered entry times. And school starts, generally before the main rush of the rest of the city, because they'll be in school earlier than businesses. And so it is busy, but not as busy at that hour. And then they are talking about potentially staggering entry. We went through at the transportation committee where the school bus drop off would be, and that they would be escorted in. So and then teachers from the school would be here greeting kids as they come in. So and that's partly why we've created a bit of a recess here. You can see this is where the building starts, which gives the school a little bit of additional space that's on their own property to kind of pull it out of the kind of flow of sidewalk.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
What about dismissal at 3 o'clock, approximately 2:35?
So in that case, they do dismiss out of both of these doors. They don't like coming in out of more than one door because it's hard to control and it's as from a security standpoint. But the kids will gather in the auditorium, which is at the same level, be broken up into different groups, whether they're depending on how they're going home, who's picking them up, some staying in after school. And then they will be able to dismiss kids out of both of these doors. And again, the times can be staggered.
I'm not
on that point-
there's an after-school program,
Thank you.
right? So there's fewer children departing. It
Yep.
would be staggered, and we have a 15-foot wide sidewalk at this specific area. So, and the other thing I wanted to add, Ms. Fraser, is that we are actually doing a detailed pedestrian study that evaluates the number of students, caregivers, in terms of the sidewalk's capacity to handle those students. And that has to be reviewed by DOT, and it's assigned grade levels, meaning, whether service degrades in terms of the capacity of the sidewalk. And that's based on area and the number of people that move through a portion of an area at time. And it'll be determined whether or not, folks have to be released over a slower range. So it's a time and space type of thing. So they actually have very detailed requirements for evaluating pedestrian movements.
Yeah, but I believe that DOT study does not include traffic, and that's a problem.
It does. It's comprehensive.
It absolutely does. Daryl, could you ask your question?
Well, I have multiple questions. So, but some of them are, I think, pretty quick answers. But just to extend on what Barbara was saying, how many buses will you have?
I'm sorry, I have to rule that out of order. That was covered by traffic and transportation. It's not germane to our
No, but
committee.
I think it goes to the noise as well as it goes to
Environment.
health when you have all that exhaust coming out of
Exactly.
All right, go ahead.
Well, we're anticipating roughly 2 school buses.
like large ones or the small ones.
Larger school buses is what we're anticipating based on the projections, yes.
Okay, thank you.
The kids get there.
And
You're saying that 150 kids will be walkers?
When is this opening again? I'm sorry if I missed it.
September 2022.
Okay. How tall is the hotel next door? If anyone knows that.
The hotel is across the street.
20, the one next door to the east.
Oh, the new one,
Right?
The new one.
I think it's 220 feet or something, roughly.
Yeah, that's the office building portion of the complex.
Right. So that'll cast a huge shadow over your building. Or
Well, to
constant-
the east of us, so
constant shadow.
in the morning
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Are you going to be taking the kids at all to Highbridge Park nearby or no? For whatever programming?
I mean, it's possible. I mean, I think we would want to travel to as many places as we can outside of the building just to expose children to their community and the community of New York. We currently park across the street from our co-located school. If we needed to or wanted to, I don't necessarily see a reason why we wouldn't. We have really strong routines and procedures in all things. So I think crossing the street would be relatively safe, or it would be extremely safe if we wanted to do it.
Okay. And do you know approximately what percentage of students will be coming from the neighborhood?
I don't know the exact number, but like right now, I would say it's 85%, give or take. The overwhelming large majority come from CS, Community School District 6. And then, the rest pretty much come from the South Bronx.
So 85% is the number coming from School District 6.
I would say that is most likely the absolute minimum. Like I don't want to like quote that as a definitive 100% accurate number. But
And how do they get there?
So
via bus, via subway, how?
So interestingly, and Amber, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe about a third of our school comes from like the MTA, a third walk or get like dropped off in a car, and a third come from the bus.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
And you don't have to go far back. If there are issues with getting the kids into the school and parking, we did that with the school on Fort Washington, and there's extensive conversations you can see on our website probably. You pointed out, I just have a couple more questions, a recessed gate or a recessed area. Will that be gated when it's not in use?
Sure.
We haven't determined that yet. Our starting point would be no. But that's a conversation we just haven't gotten into yet.
Okay.
Well,
I think you probably understand my concerns there.
You might want to think about having a gate. I think Daryl's got a good point.
Yeah. And I was just wondering, are there any residents on the call of the buildings behind the school? I'm assuming not.
No, only a business owner from the area.
Oh, hello. And then lastly, how many folks does your auditorium seat?
It's about 400.
Oh, okay. And it will be open to community meetings?
So we definitely see ourselves as a community-based school. So we really do want to figure out how to bring our theater to the community. And so we would be very open to work with folks.
Okay, well, the Community Board 12 General Meeting on the 4th Tuesday of September, 2022.
Exactly.
I'll pencil you
Read
in.
my mind.
I think we should.
You had
we can
promised that one
reserve
to
this
us.
Unless it's already taken, maybe we can reserve the space now.
I'm penciling you in on my calendar now.
Thank you. Catherine, do you have a question? Catherine?
Yes, sorry, I was just unmuting myself. Hi, I have a question. So based on the initial proposal when we passed the resolution for the building next door, they had proposed a public plaza. I'm not sure if that's still in the works and wanted to know if it is, and that's something that you're obviously all informed on what side of the property. So would that be by the kids' yard? Is it south? Do you have any idea about that?
The plans I've seen, it's not going to be adjacent to the building. It would have to be, if they were going to supply it, we'll certainly look at it, would have to be on the 180th Amsterdam side.
Well, my memory is that it would be in the middle of the block in the back of their building.
Yeah,
So,
it's.
I think it's about, Amber, we looked at this, right? I think it's about there, and it's
Is
up
it
at
there?
the.
Yeah, okay.
I believe so.
And it's up a little bit. It's up at the second or third floor, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
we
okay.
modeled, just so you know, to do the line of sight study, we actually took those plans and we modeled that entire building and we looked at all of that. So if I remember correctly, that did, it screened out of anything related to play area noise impact on us, on them, or them on us.
All right,
Okay,
very
awesome,
good.
thank you.
All right, Catherine, is that it?
Yes, nice and brief and relevant.
All right, thank you. Sally, you're up?
Hold on, am I muted or am I not muted now?
No, you're not muted.
Hey, I just had a question. Have you looked at how crowded that subway station is in terms of commuting in the morning and commuting in the afternoon when school is out? It's full of high school students. I just wonder how you're gonna fit a bunch of elementary school students in that rush. Did
So-
the Transportation Committee address that at all?
No.
So in terms of the numbers that we have, the threshold of having to evaluate any one subway station, and that goes by platform and by individual line, is 200 students. And based on our projections, we don't exceed that threshold. So there would not be greater than 200 students. And that includes caregivers as well. We don't exceed that threshold of having to look at subway in terms of levels of service or doing an analysis on it. I think a lot of these students, honestly, based on what we're seeing, there's going to be a lot of walkers, and a lot of the students students that are coming from the South Bronx are likely going to be taking the MTA bus just based on the convenience of where the stop is located.
It might not be a requirement for you guys to look at it, but it's something the community board needs to consider because that subway station is just nuts during student rush hours.
All right.
So one of the things I wanted, this is from Equity Environmental again, and I think that's a very fair question. And the current school, of course, has to deal with this in terms of subway riders and arrivals as well. But so this is K through 5. Most of the parents come, most of the children come accompanied, with a caregiver. In addition, in terms of subway arrivals, we certainly evaluate it and go in and look at it. But this is, in terms of, you're talking about a safety issue and a personal issue between the school and its parents and their children coming and arriving to school. And so I mean, I guess I would throw this to Charlie. Have you guys had any issues at your other school with youngsters coming to school, and do they generally come unaccompanied in your experience?
So I don't know of any child that has come unaccompanied. and I'm at the door pretty much every morning for the past 3 years. I mean, we're co-located with a middle school, and so I actually feel really fortunate about the past 3 years and being able to work with the middle school. Who it's really easy to work with them, because we've had to really figure out how to like create routines and procedures and protocols to ensure that these student arrivals and dismissals are very safe, and that includes working with like school security teams and all of that. And so like I really feel confident that those challenges could very easily be supported or fixed by how tight our procedures are.
All right, thank you. Are there any other questions from committee members? Are there any questions from members of the?
This is Barbara. I wanted
Barbara, please, we got to move this committee meeting along. We have a huge agenda.
Quickly, then I wanted to say that you will not on K through 3 see kids come unaccompanied, but your 5th graders, you will see a good chunk come unaccompanied. So you do have to be prepared for that.
Well, I think, and I just want to say, Sally makes a good point. The subway station at 181st Street is really more significantly crowded than the station you're now dealing with at 161st or 163rd is what it's called, or even 168th Street. It's an issue that you may need to address, but I would be surprised if anybody sends their 5th grader by themselves. Okay, any other questions?
I have a question, Steve.
Is that Ms. Hertzberg?
It is Ms. Hertzberg.
Okay, very good. What's your question?
So I'm going to be next door to you in the commercial building, not where the
Can you identify what you mean by you are going to be next door?
Yes. So my name is Fern Hertzberg, and I'm the executive director of ARC 16 Fort Washington, which sponsors a senior center, a well-known senior center in our community, ARC Fort Washington Senior Center. And we are in the process of relocating right now from 174th and Broadway to 516 West 181st, where we will also be offloading and onloading seniors who will be coming to, yes, that building.
This one here?
Yeah. The one that they're doing the elevator and the stairs and all of that on the Audubon side. Because we're going into that building on the lower level. And we're supposed to move actually over the summer in theory. So we serve about 150 people a day who are all over the age of 60. So I think we need to coordinate in a very serious way the transportation and onloading and offloading issue, because we have a lot more than 2 buses and a lot of frail people who we don't want mowed down by a 5th grader who wants to run to school.
Okay, Fern.
It won't be in the morning, but I think we need to get there.
Hi, Fern, is your phone number 212-781-5700?
It certainly is, Steve. Thank you.
Would you be open to taking a phone call from Amanda or somebody else?
Anytime. All of those phone calls are going to my cell phone.
All right. So, Amanda, could you arrange to meet with your new neighbor?
Sure. We can arrange a meeting. Absolutely.
What I would love to do is figure out a way to get our students performing for your for your community.
Yes, that would work for me in a big way too. Yes.
Yeah,
I was about to ask you to do that. Thank you.
Yeah, I see great potential here for a great partnership.
Yes, I agree with you. That's part of why I'm on this meeting.
Oh, okay, very good. I should have figured that out. Okay. All right, I'd like to move the meeting along since we have so much more to cover. I'd like to postpone till the end of the meeting any discussion among the committee members about issues that we might want to pass on to the Land Use Committee. So at this time, I'd like to thank Amanda and Amber and Tom and Charlie and Kevin, whoever else was on this call. Thank you very much. And I warn you now that I will probably be calling you because I haven't finished reading that environmental assessment statement, and I'm bound to have more questions. I do want to mention that the statement also covers solid waste and sanitation services, covers water and sewer infrastructure, and by my reading of it, the impact on both of those is minimal and is really nothing much to speak about. Amber, would you agree?
That's correct. And Steve, you have my card, so feel free to reach out to me. My phone number's on there by email, and I'll send you the phase 2.
Okay, very good. You may regret making that offer. Okay, thank you.
Thank
All
you,
right.
Steve, and everybody for great questions.
Okay, well, we're looking forward to our meeting in September of 2022.
Steve, but this is Maria Luna. Can I just make a very short
No,
question
no,
before they
no,
go?
no.
Because I am on the committee. I am a member of the center of the Art Center, and also there is another agency that is on that same area, which is Esperanza Center, that have people with disability, mental and physical disability, and they should be linking with them also in order to have whatever is happening on that. They should be working together.
And the women's shelter.
Where is the Esperanza Center located?
In the same building, Steve.
Same building.
And
Same building where I'm gonna be.
And they,
okay.
The women's homeless shelter, please.
Well, that's across the street. I am concerned about
Okay, very good.
the movement on that sidewalk and that
Okay.
particular, they're wrapping around, Steve, I'm sorry, but they're going to be wrapping around these two particular, groups, the very seniors and the people with disability and mental disability. So we have to be careful before,
Okay, but
we move forward with this.
chances are the schedules are not going to conflict. The kids are going to be there much earlier and later than the seniors. I'm not sure about Esperanza. Who's the director at Esperanza now?
Manley.
Still?
I am the president of the board also, okay?
Oh my God! And
Okay, that's it.
And what's the phone number there?
Let me give you my phone number, 212-923-8818.
You don't have the phone number for Esperanza?
I don't remember the number, right?
And you're
I don't give
okay.
me a call.
Okay, very good. All right, so Amanda, that's another contact you're going to want to make. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you all.
And,
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And is the Department of Health still on the phone? Pauline?
Hi, Steve. Yes, I'm still here.
Oh, God, thank you. All right, Pauline, you have a report to give us on COVID-19?
Sure, I'll be very, very brief. The cases as of today are positive cases are 174,709 positive cases in New York. And I'll just go over very briefly the mayor's press conference today, because I think he highlighted some really important things that are happening. And then I'm happy to take any questions after that. So the mayor announced a new antibody survey effort, which will reach about 140,000 New Yorkers. And this is in addition to the antibody tests for first responders that he announced last week. So this is going to be very, very impactful in sort of identifying when we can start to unpause, quote unquote, from our social distancing and trying to get things back to normal. So the initial testing sites are going to be in Morrisania in the Bronx, East New York, and Brooklyn, somewhere in Upper Manhattan, and in Long Island City. More details will come, and they want to test up to 5,000 people per day in all 5 of those locations, so a total of 5,000 per day, and it's by appointment only. So antibody testing is different than the COVID diagnostic test. The COVID-19 diagnostic test will give you a result for active illness. This antibody test is for people who may not have been able to take a COVID-19 diagnostic test, but it will show like in your blood whether or not you have antibodies of COVID-19. So what it will show is whether or not, a percentage of the population have already been exposed. And so that's helpful in us in terms of our surveillance. And as community transmission declines, it'll help with our identifying hotspots and maybe sending more resources to particular locations that may have a little bit more, cases happening. So anyway, I just wanted to share that information with everybody, and I'll open up to questions so I won't take up too much of anybody's time.
Well, let me just begin with the question that I sent you by email.
Yeah.
I think we're particularly concerned about the direct impact. Actually, before I get there, when you mentioned that one of the sites for the antibody testing will be somewhere in northern Manhattan,
Yeah.
Are you referring to Washington Heights and Inwood?
You know, I don't have that particular location right now, but I can get that information to you as soon as I find out. I'm not sure.
All right, appreciate that.
Natalie, you know the location?
We were told that this would be at 21 Old Broadway by 126 in West Harlem. So if that information from today's briefing is still the planned site, that is what they're looking at.
Oh, okay, good. Then, so there was,
Okay,
I think, a briefing this afternoon. So thank you, Natalie. I appreciate that.
All right, so that's the Health Department building at 126th Street, one block east of Broadway. So the question that I posed to you by email was whether or not you have a breakdown by zip code and by race of people who have passed away during this COVID-19 crisis. And I think this is
Right.
information we would like to have so we can have a real clearer sense of how it's impacted our community. And your response to me was that the information is not yet available, but it's being developed. Is that correct?
Yes, so we do have the rates of cases, hospitalizations, and deaths broken down by race and ethnicity, and we're seeing that African American and Latinos are being disproportionately impacted by this, but we don't have that breakdown by zip code as of right now. So the information we have broken down by zip code are COVID-19 positive cases by zip code and the percentage of patients testing positive by zip code. All of this is on our website, but we don't have the information about death by race and ethnicity in zip codes.
But also you don't have like just the raw numbers of deaths by zip code either.
No, not by zip code.
And when might you have that?
And is that something that you might have in the future?
Yes, it's definitely something that we are working on actively. I think up to this point, our teams have been frantically just trying to get the basic information out and not being able to collate all this information based on granular zip code. But I also think that a lot of reporting is missing as well. So I think, not everything requires a zip code. So, I think a lot of that information is still being compiled. A lot of back investigation is taking place. And so as soon as we can be able to accurately collate that data, that will be able to come out.
Okay, I appreciate that. All right.
Wait, Steve?
Daryl, go ahead.
Yeah, real quick. And as part of that too, I saw a statistic, I think it was yesterday or the other day, and there about the number of deaths per borough, and the biggest difference between where people died versus where they live was pretty stark. It was like 1,000 people difference. So that's one of the other reasons we want, that information.
I don't understand that point. What was the difference?
Because they don't live in Manhattan, they live in other boroughs, but where they unfortunately passed away, most likely at a facility like Presbyterian.
Oh, well, listen, we have more hospitals than any other borough.
Well, yeah.
So it's reasonable to assume many people are going to die here who don't live in Manhattan.
I believe that the data, though, is based on home address and not location of death. So I think, unless their address is unknown. So that could probably be, where there could be a room for just not knowing because they don't have a home address listed. But I believe when it comes to death data, it's based on the home zip code and not where they unfortunately passed away.
Steve, I have a question. It's Tanya.
Tanya,
I have
go
a
ahead.
question. Yes.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Steve. The question I had was, I mean, you may or may not have this information, but one of the things that's come out over the last day or two has been the number of people who are testing, new people who are, you know, testing positive and hospitalizations who actually were at home. They weren't outside, they were at home. And the reason I asked that question is because, you know, there are a lot of people who are living in residences where there's a lot of people in the house and people are not always able to, you know, quarantine separately, that kind of thing,
Yes.
or even separate someone who may be sick. So I'm wondering if you
Right.
have that data, like, is that impacting this community more than maybe some other communities? I mean, I don't like dealing with implications or people like guessing, but I just want to know if that's something you're looking at
Sure.
in terms of where people are kind of like housed in mass numbers together, and this could be impacting them.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's definitely one of the reasons why certain neighborhoods may be more impacted than other neighborhoods, just based on the makeup of, you know, the housing stock, how many people live in an apartment, whether or not that apartment has multiple rooms or multiple bathrooms where someone can self-isolate and quarantine appropriately if they do come down with COVID-19. So you're absolutely right that that is a part of why there could be some disparities, and as part of a way to minimize that or to address that disparity, the mayor did announce that isolation hoteling program where they are opening it up to people who have tested positive at the hospital can be referred to an isolation hotel room if they can show that they don't have the appropriate or, you know, they don't have the space in their own apartment to be able to safely isolate from their family members or from their roommates, et cetera. So that's a way that the city is working to try to minimize that transmission and to address that disparity in our neighborhoods.
Do you have numbers of where this is mostly impacting people? Do you have numbers? Is it certain neighborhoods? I mean, do you have numbers
Yeah, I mean,
yet about that?
I don't know for certain whether or not they're tracking that information at the hospitals when they start referring people to isolation hotels. That's definitely something we can ask H&H and maybe the other community health facilities that are doing this referral. But I mean, it would be safe to assume in certain neighborhoods where, you know, there are a lot of apartment buildings or where people we know are living in SROs, whether legal or illegal. You know, these are all things that really impact folks. And I think, you know, we want to make sure that people, even if you are in a space that maybe shouldn't be divided to house that many people, you should still ask your healthcare provider if you test positive for this isolation hoteling option.
Okay, I saw a hand from Dr. Fauci. I mean, Councilmember Mark Levine.
Oh my God, Steve, you're never gonna let me live that down, huh?
If I were you, I wouldn't want to live it down.
Well, I'm not expecting Brad Pitt to play me on Saturday Night Live. I'll say that.
Okay, well, no, well, you got your other friend who can do it.
Norton, yeah. Well, hello everybody. And Steve, is it okay if I just give a little bit of an update?
Well, not yet. Hold on.
Okay.
I don't want to cut off Pauline. I made her wait so
Oh,
long.
no, it's fine.
No, please, Pauline, you're doing great. Keep going.
I have a question for Pauline.
I'm sorry, but 1 second. It was Sally. Did you just raise your hand? I can't hear you, Sally.
Okay, yes. Scott Stringer did a report on the number of essential workers in the Community Board 12 was fourth in the city in terms of number of essential workers. I think based on his data, over 24,000, and his data was a few years old. Are y'all looking at all at risk in certain communities because we have a high proportion of essential workers?
That's a great question. I don't know off the top of my head, and I am happy to find out for you.
Okay, great, thanks.
Okay, Natalie. Mrs. Spino, are you there?
Hang on, I had to unmute. Hello, Pauline, real quick. Thank you, Steve. So we know that these antibody testing sites are going to be by appointment only, and these state partners testing sites for the diagnostic are by appointment only. But can you just confirm that the public hospitals, are they still doing walk-in testing for diagnostic?
Yes, they are.
Okay, so no
I think,
appointment needed in public hospitals.
Yes, but they are prioritizing people 65 years and older with underlying health conditions, and the ones that are on NYCHA properties, like St. Nicholas houses, they're prioritizing NYCHA residents first.
At the walk-in.
Well, I believe we have one site at the Dykeman houses at 175 Nagel Avenue. I don't know that we have any other testing sites available to the public in our community. I wish there was at least another one.
Is the
I'll
city
definitely bring that back.
is the city MD on 181st? Are they doing it? I think they might be.
We don't have a list of any other sponsored locations. Like if there's a state sponsored location or if there's a private facility that is doing the testing, we only have a list, unfortunately, of the H&H hospitals and the NYCHA properties that we're working with on the diagnostic testing.
Yeah, there's evidently a state-sponsored site at a private medical office, Somos, at 2360 Amsterdam at 176th Street, I believe. But I don't know if you can just walk in there.
All those are by appointment only, Steve.
All right, thank you. Well, Natalie, are you aware of a list of all of the possible sites where people can go to be tested?
For the state-sponsored sites that are by appointment, I do indeed. I really wish the chat were enabled on this so I could just paste that list into this and everybody could save that chat when they close the meeting. I also have a list of all the parks face covering distribution sites. I don't know if that's something you've shared with the committee, but I'm happy to share that as well.
Well, it was just updated today,
we will do that through email, I guess.
Right. Yeah, I will send it around. We are going to be distributing the Parks Department. That is going to be distributing masks again. We just did it in the last few days at J. Hood Wright and Highbridge. We're going to be going back to both sites, and we'll also be up in Inwood Hill Park next week.
It was already put out, Steve. That was already put out in email and Facebook by the Parks Department.
Oh well, thank God. Okay, but Natalie, if you forward me whatever list you have, I'll send it on to the committee members. Any other questions? Any other questions for Pauline? Okay, if Anna and Ross don't vehemently object, I'll let Mark speak now. I see one thumb from Ross.
Thank you, Anna and Ross.
Okay, very good. Mr. Levine.
Thank you so much, Steve, and hello again, everybody. I wanted to follow up on a couple points I heard Pauline make. This program for offering hotels to people who are sick and need to isolate is just so critical, and it's ramping up slowly, but it is ramping up. You have to go through a approved medical provider, and there's a fairly limited list, 12, I think, at last count citywide, with an important addition yesterday of a toll-free number you can call at our public hospitals. So I'll just say a word about how all this works. The nearest provider to Uptown that can book you in for a hotel is actually in East Harlem, believe it or not. So I certainly am hoping we can get, I think there's one in CB12, Metropolitan Mental Health Clinic on 165th.
165th, yeah. But Mark, an uncle of one of our community board members who was in New York Presbyterian, when he was being discharged, he was offered a chance to go to a hotel.
That's an older, right. That's an older program.
Oh,
so
okay.
That's a program for patients who are no longer in need of acute care.
Yes.
I know Presbyterian did this. They aren't well enough to go home. And so the hotels was a good place for them to recuperate. And that's been going for a while now. But what we're talking about is something new. This is for people who are not seriously sick. They don't need hospitals. They have mild or moderate symptoms, typically a fever and cough. But they're in apartments where they could risk passing the virus to someone else in the household. And so this is a way to keep the rest of the household safe by isolating the sick person. And the city will provide meals while you're in the hotel, because of course you can't leave the hotel room because that would defeat the purpose. The city will get your prescriptions to your hotel room. We'll provide laundry services. And there also are a limited number of medical staff in the building, in the hotel, an EMT, and some of the hotels, I think, a nurse. And they'll do a daily check on everyone there. And I'm told if you don't answer the phone, they'll knock on your door. So again, that's not for people who are seriously sick. That's just about folks who need to isolate. But for Washington Heights and Inwood and Marble Hill, huge need, because we all have small apartments. And so again, the way you get in now is from a referral from a doctor. The doctor can book it. But now yesterday, there's a new toll-free number, 888-NYC-4NYC, which people can call. And I believe they'll need to come in to an in-person visit at an H&H facility. But it's a way in for people who don't know where to go otherwise. Now, the two hotels currently being used are in Queens, unfortunately. But the city will pay for transportation because they don't want you on mass transit if you're sick because you're contagious. So this is actually, we're going to need to develop a whole new transportation system as this scales up because, again, we don't want people moving around the city on buses and subways. The idea is they should not be contacting anybody. And I don't know if Pauline or others have talked about an emerging and exciting new kind of testing, which is antibody testing. Did you cover this all tonight?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Do you know about the site uptown for this?
Go ahead and tell us.
Well, so there's going to be one publicly accessible free antibody testing site in each borough. And the one that's nearest us, it's in my district, but it's actually CB9. It's going to be right near Manhattanville houses. The address is 21 Old Broadway.
Right.
So it's right off Broadway and about a block north of 125th.
Yes.
Now, this is going to be free antibody testing, and you don't have to have necessarily even been sick because some people might have been asymptomatic, and it's okay to catch them too. And it doesn't matter whether you have health insurance or whether you're documented. It's going to be by appointment only. And we think tomorrow the phone number is going to be up for people to call and make an appointment. As soon as I have that, I'll pass it on to you all. But obviously for someone in CB12, that's relatively close. And a word of caution, which I'm sure you all know, but when you're talking to people in the public about this testing, it's certainly helpful for people to know if they were sick because we're all curious. I actually got an antibody test earlier this week. Some of you know I was sick and I didn't get a test while I was sick, and my antibody test came back positive. But there's a really wonderful reason why you can get an antibody test, which is what I'm going to do, and that's donating plasma. And maybe Anna can talk about this, but Presby is now participating or now offering plasma donations, as far as I understand. Recently, they
Okay, let Anna report on that.
Please do, Anna.
Okay. Well, this is something Dr. Fauci can't claim. He can't donate plasma.
And this actually is Ross's, I think, because it's a research study that Columbia is doing.
Okay.
All right. All right, Mark, anything more?
Well, yes, just one more point on the antibody. The most important point of all, actually, is that no one should use a positive antibody test as an excuse to not take precautions like wearing a face covering, like social distancing, and no one should use it to make any individual health decisions, because there are a lot of false positives. I'm assuming that a test that Columbia Health Sciences is offering is on the very accurate end of the spectrum, but there are also some inaccuracies even in the best lab-based tests. But more importantly, we don't understand immunity entirely. And we think and we hope that you have immunity after you've recovered from coronavirus and with the antibodies, but we don't know that for sure. And so it would be really dangerous if people stream into one of these antibody testing locations and take their test results and decide that they have magical armor and that they can run around with no protection, etc. So to the extent you're talking about the growing availability of this testing, please emphasize this. Otherwise, it really is potentially dangerous. Last thing I'll say, and then I'll stop. Governor Cuomo has pushed forward essentially a research project all over the state of people to take antibody tests. And that is very helpful. This is very helpful on the population level for us to track the progress of the disease. And in fact, the test they're using is pretty on the reliable end. But again, that's different from making a personal health decision. Yes, for plasma donation. Yes, for tracking the disease across our city and state. Yes, if you're just curious whether you had it, but no for changing your behavior or your healthcare. That's it. Thank you, Steve.
Okay, isn't it more important for us to actually take the diagnostic test since it's possible that some of us could have had the disease or still have it without showing any symptoms at all? Don't we really need to? Don't we really need to have a great deal, as we were, I think, discussing with Pauline? Don't we need a lot more locations where we can go to be tested just to find out if we have the virus at all?
Yes, we're doing at this point probably 13 or 14,000 diagnostic tests a day in the city. Now, I don't know if that sounds like a lot to you guys. We need to do probably 10 times that number in order to safely reopen the economy, and particularly people in sensitive roles like healthcare, mass transit, where they're coming in contact with a lot of people. We might want to test them daily or multiple times a week. And I mean, we ultimately want to get to the point where you can go to your neighborhood doctor and this will just be part of the test that you can get. But we have a problem with supplies, and you can blame the federal government for this. We're 2 months into this, and still we don't have adequate reagents. Those are the chemicals you need to perform the test. There's some shortages in other parts of the supplies too, which are also a problem, but really it's reagents. And it's not just a New York City shortage. It's not just a national shortage. It's a global shortage. People I've talked to have called this a world war for these supplies. And we need the federal government to ramp up production nationally, to have this thing called the Defense Production Act. They can do it. And then they need to distribute to places like us. So we need desperately federal help if we're going to test on the level we need to reopen safely.
But the mayor is talking about having these supplies manufactured locally, so we don't have to depend upon.
He's talking about things like swabs, and that's great to have them made here. We're doing them with 3D printing. And by the way, we're not talking about Q-tips that you pick up at your pharmacy, okay? These are medical devices. But and also the containers in which you transport the sample, I think we're building them too. But it's really coming down to the reagents. And in fact, there are new tests coming out that you don't even need a swab. It's by saliva. Or it's essentially a nasal swab, not this kind of thing you got to put halfway up to your brain. So there's a lot of new developments that probably mean we can even start testing without going to a medical provider, which is great. But eventually that sample has to be processed somewhere, right? Whether you're doing it yourself or you're doing it with help of a medical provider. So that's where the bottleneck is. And we haven't solved that yet, even though it's May and there's no excuse for months being lost in this effort.
Steve, Mark, can I just pick up on one thing that Mark said? He talked about the antibody test and it's sort of being the Wild West out there, if you will. You may have seen that 2 or 3 days ago, I think it was, the FDA has said that starting roughly a week from now, all antibody tests will need FDA approval.
Thank God.
Yes. So, I mean, obviously at Columbia, we have developed antibody tests. We're submitting it for FDA approval. If we haven't gotten already, I'm pretty sure we will get it. But starting, again, something within the next 7 or 10 days, the FDA will exercise some sort of oversight on these antibody tests, because Mark is right that before that, I can mix an antibody test in my backyard if I wanted to, and could try to do it. But starting, the FDA is now asserting itself.
All right, thank you. All right, any questions for Mark? All right, thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay, and
Great seeing you.
we may end up inviting you back next month.
Anytime.
Very good.
All right.
Okay, all right.
Bye-bye now.
Anna, are you still with us?
I am.
Oh, thank you. Okay, Anna, it's your turn.
Sure. So, hi. Thanks very much for making time for us tonight. I just want to begin by reminding everyone it's Nurses Week. So we've been acknowledging our nurses, and if there's a nurse in your life, please be sure to give an extra thank you to him or her this week for their heroic efforts. So I am glad to say, are continuing to see an improvement in the number of people that are being hospitalized. At the height of the surge, which we estimate to have been in mid-April, we had over 2,500 people who were COVID positive. And yesterday we had 1,349. So we've really seen a tremendous decline in the number of positive patients, and we are really thrilled about that. We have at this point discharged over 8,000 patients from the hospital system as a whole. Bakerfield continues to be in place as our field hospital, the Ryan Larkin Field Hospital. So we're continuing to use that space. We are definitely still in response mode, but we are starting to think about what the future can be. But we're not quite there yet. So we'll be keeping you posted, of course, as things begin to change, but we are still in response mode. We recently made an update to our visitation policy for labor, delivery, and postpartum. Folks are now allowed to have one support person with them through the entire birthing process. So that updated visitation policy is available on our website. I think last time I was with you, I had asked for your help in spreading the message about promoting social distancing, the importance of staying home, wearing masks, and we are continuing to ask for help in sharing that message with the community. We invite your suggestions for how we can be more effective in communicating that out, but we continue to be really concerned about the spread of the disease in the community and are looking for help in effectively communicating to folks about prevention. I'm glad to say we do have some new and continuing community activities that are taking place. We have, of course, moved all of these to a virtual platform. I will send information to Steve so you can have the flyers, but these include activities for older adults through our health outreach program. Our youth hub is continuing to work with young people ages 14 to 24. And we also now have a parenting series available. It's called Parenting During COVID, and it's being hosted by our psychiatry division. So we are hopeful that'll provide some really useful information to parents in the community. And I'll send the details on all of that to Steve so he can share it with you. I think that's it.
Okay, Anna, in my continuing effort to try to get specific statistics on the impact in our community, what you mentioned is that at the height of the or the apex of the crisis, in the system you had 2,500 patients. Do you have a breakdown of how many you had at the Milstein and at Allen?
I don't have that breakdown.
Would you be able to provide it?
No.
I don't think we're sharing that information. I think we have just been reporting out our system-wide numbers.
All right. Well, I think it would be helpful to the community if we could have those numbers. I don't quite understand why it's a problem. And so as of yesterday, the number you have is in the House is 1,349.
Right.
Okay. And And I guess, again, what we would also be interested in having, as I requested from Pauline, would be the numbers of people who did not survive and who died. Are there any other, Sally, you have a question? Sally?
Yes. Any discussion about when you'll resume elective surgeries?
We're talking about it, but I don't have a date. But, and also that that's partly framed by the governor, and he is working with the trade association sort of on a regional basis, and our region has not been okayed for that.
There was an area of New York State, upstate maybe, where he said it was okay?
Right.
There was a list I saw earlier in the week that had, I think, something like 30-something counties in it, all of them upstate, which I think were candidates for resuming elective surgery.
Right. Okay.
Somewhere in the 30s. I can't remember exactly how many.
All right. Maria, is that a hand or just a finger you're giving
that's
me?
hand.
I think you were giving me the finger.
Hey, my mother will never say, allow me to do something like that, especially to you. Anyway, let me just ask, I am confused about a report that someone that dies in the hospital, they don't know who the person is, where the person is coming. When the ambulance comes and pick up someone at the building, they know where they live, they know the family, they know the name. So how come, or the ethnicity, how come all of a sudden no one knows who this person is and they materialize like, E.T. So that's very confusing to me. But my more serious question to all of you is that I have a family, the father died, left a widow with 2 kids, no money, nothing to live on. Who do I refer that person to? Who can help out that family with funeral arrangements? Because with 2 kids that are under 8 years old, she have no idea what to do. She's desperate. So the mental situation is, is critical, but who, any agency still that we can refer them to, to see if they can have alleviate this, this problem.
Well, I gotta believe the city is dealing with this issue probably all over the place.
Steve, if I could.
Who is this?
This is Anna. So can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
The Red Cross has now set up a phone number. I can forward the information to you, Maria, or just Steve. That is a resource for helping people figure out exactly the situation, costs, figuring out who to work with, just navigate the whole death process.
Okay,
thank you.
Sorry,
Thank you so
I wanted
much.
to, Steve, I wanted to say also the city, and I think Ebenezer sent it out probably in the last week or so. The city is funding and supporting around funeral assistance. There's a city agency for it. So Maria, I have your email, so if anything, I could send it to you directly. And then there are multiple nonprofits in this area that are supporting around food deliveries, around activities with children, and a whole host of resources. So offline we can talk about that.
All right, because I'm taking care of food distribution tomorrow at 1 o'clock. If you have anybody that needs some food, send it to my building, 839 Riverside Drive. At 1 o'clock in the afternoon. We'll give you full dinner, huh?
Well, one piece of good news on this front, on the cost of burial, the city has increased the amount they'll provide to low-income families from $900. Now it's $3,400. That just happened in the last day or two. And for the first time, undocumented immigrant families are eligible. And it's HRA that gives out the money, but I think you could contact any city council office and we could connect you for that family if they need that assistance.
All right, so that number, Mark, was $3,400?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's probably not enough, but it certainly helps.
It does.
Not through a ticket at home.
Yeah. All right, any other questions for Anna?
I just want to add one more resource.
Who's that? Who's
Sure.
talking? Hertzberg?
Yeah, me again.
Oh, God. Okay, go ahead.
I thought you were happy I was off the board, but here I am offering advice again. The senior centers have all been authorized to become authorized enrollers in Get Food. So we can literally go into the portal and do the enrollment for people. Though obviously our primary purpose is seniors, we can go into the food portal for anybody. So I'll give you our number because it's gonna go to me anyway, 212-781-5700. And we'll be happy to do a direct enrollment into the food portal.
Okay, very good. And Domingo has a group that, if I understand from, that I gather from seeing all his pictures on Facebook, where he's been running around delivering food to people in both Manhattan, I think, and in the Bronx.
Yes.
And Cloth at 159th Street has got a very active program going on.
Yeah. So yeah, we offer $200 worth of groceries in a
Hold on one second. Who is this?
Domingo.
Domingo. I didn't even know you were on the call. Go ahead.
Well, waiting for the conversation of the night, but so yeah, we we're currently helping 150 families in Harlem, Washington Heights, and within the Bronx, with about $200 worth of groceries. Not just culturally responsive food, but yeah.
All right, that's fantastic.
This is Barbara. I wanted to add on the food.
And a book too. It also includes a book.
Oh, how nice.
Go ahead, Barbara.
Okay, I wanted to add to that. I connected with a group, Farms to Food Pantry, and they're based with Diaz in the Bronx. And it would be very good if we could hook up with them. They have hooked up with Idaho Farms and now also with Upstate New York. You can look at their Facebook and change.org page. And they have bought over $200,000 worth of food that would have rotted in the fields or gone to waste and brought it directly to food pantries in the South Bronx. We're talking things like 45,000 pounds of potatoes brought here by refrigerator trucks. And, large amounts. I think would be very good if we could hook that up with people like Domingo, hook into that and see what you can get, why not?
All right, well, maybe give that information to Domingo. Maybe he can take advantage of it.
I did. Okay. I sent you a Facebook message. Didn't you get it, Domingo?
Hey, please, hey.
Oh, I'm sorry, Barbara. I'm currently overwhelmed with messages. But you have my phone number. Feel free to always.
Domingo, it's from Barbara.
Okay.
Barbara.
And that's Diaz Jr., right, Barbara?
Okay.
It's what? Diaz Jr.?
Yeah, God, yeah. Which Diaz is it?
Look at the person who's head of East Side House, something connected with East Side Houses in the Bronx.
Oh, I don't know what that is. Okay. All right. Let's move on. Anna, do you have anything else for us?
I could just mention that we do also have our growing food access program through the CHALK program and the Ambulatory Care Network. So if you're collecting that information, our program is also continuing. We now have food distribution happening twice a week. I think we're serving 400 families.
Oh, and Anna, I want to thank you for sending me the information from the State Department of Health about the program for hiring contact tracers. Is that what they're
you're
called?
Welcome.
I think that's what. So, and I forwarded that information to members of the committee. We probably should send it out to the entire board. Probably should send it out to the entire community because this is actually also an employment opportunity for people who might be looking for jobs. Okay, Mr. Fromer, you're up.
Thank you, Steve. I want to start on a somber note. I'm sure most people are aware that roughly 2 weeks ago, we lost a member of our faculty, Dr. Breen. She was an emergency room physician up at the Allen Pavilion. She had been through COVID. She had COVID. She had recovered, but she committed suicide while recovering. And this has really struck us very hard. A lot of people are very close to this physician. We are concentrating, redoubling our efforts in terms of addressing the mental health needs of our doctors, nurses, and other staff. And we are making it clear to all our people that we are there for them. We have resources available. This is something the dean has touched on quite a lot in the last couple of days, because this is something which was really devastating to folks in our emergency department and throughout the university. We are planning on doing going to be our first attempt at a virtual community research forum. We're going to have some of our faculty members who are doing COVID research give presentations to community members about what they are doing in this area. We're looking at late May, early June. I had talked to Steve about whether or not we wanted to do it in conjunction with the June CB12 Health and Environment meeting, or do it another night, and I will defer to this group on how you want to proceed. By that, we're flexible. Either way, we certainly want to involve this committee in the event. You probably have all been to some of our other community research forums. Those were in person. This will be the first one. We're trying to use this new technology. We're hoping it works. We're going to try to make it work, but we'll see how it goes. We're still not sure whether we're going to do some sort of simultaneous Spanish translation, or we're actually going to do two different events, one night in English and one night in Spanish, because we have enough faculty who can speak Spanish and do this presentation in Spanish. But sort of keep sort of watch this space for more information about that. And then I want to end on actually quite a positive note. Normally, our fourth-year medical students would be graduating in late May, taking some time off, and then starting the residencies usually around July 1st. When the COVID crisis began, one of the things that the governor did, one of the things the executive order did, is allowed medical schools across the state to graduate their students early and have the fourth-year medical students enter the medical workforce early, so they can be part of the response. So for our medical students had met all the requirements, which turned out to be almost all of them, as I learned the last month of fourth year medical school. It's usually either electives or something. It's not exactly, by that time you have met all the requirements. So in mid-April, our students officially graduated from our fourth year students graduated from the Vagelos College of Physicians and Surgeons, and roughly half of them are part of what we call the Columbia Student Service Corps, who are working alongside doctors, nurses, and others at New York Presbyterian to respond to the effort. Yesterday, we held our virtual graduation ceremony, quite a special event where we got to confer the degrees, if you will, on the students. One member of this year's class is someone who you may be familiar with, and that's Auri Garcia. Auri Garcia is a native of Washington Heights, grew up in this community, went to Columbia College undergraduate, was actually a Dyckman Scholar, and has been with us at least once or twice at the Community Board 12 Dyckman presentations. I can't remember how many. She took a couple of years off, and then 4 years ago, was part of the entering class at Columbia. She is now graduated. She has matched for residency at New York Presbyterian and will be going into family medicine program. So as she told me this week, she has never left Northern Manhattan. So if we can make this work, and it's a big if, I want to show you about a 4-minute video that we made about Auri and her experiences at VPNS. So if you just bear with me. Where now? Okay.
What is her first name?
Auri, A-U-R-Y. Okay. Hold on one second.
Yeah, there was an article about that, Steve. I'll share it with you on Facebook.
You did share it on Facebook?
No, I'll send it to you. I'll message it to you.
Oh yeah, here we go.
Okay, thank you. Domingo, email it to me.
Okay. All right, you guys ready?
Yes.
Can you see the screen?
Yeah, yes, very nice picture.
You might have to check the volume though. Yeah.
There's no
I don't have-
sound.
I don't have the
We have
sound.
no sound.
You might have to, do you have your headphones connected to your audio? Because if
Yeah.
you change it to the computer, we can hear the sound. So take it off of your headphones and put it to the computer, and then we'll hear. No,
I just
you can
did that.
Oh, okay. We should be able to hear it if you took it off of your headphones.
Can you hear it?
No.
No.
Paola, help.
There it is. There it is. We can hear it
Okay.
now.
Should I
Yeah.
start again?
Yes.
And you could just put the volume a little bit higher since it's using your computer audio.
I don't hear it.
And so when I was applying to college, my guidance counselor mentioned that I should try to apply to some of the Ivy Leagues since I was going to be graduating valedictorian from high school. First generation of my family to go.
Is this not working?
No, no, it's very, very low.
Having the pipeline programs is something that's very important so that children from underserved backgrounds know that this is a and so I think having Columbia in my backyard just sort of started my wheels turning when I was in high school. You know, there's this great institution here and it's something that I can aspire to. The institution gave me the opportunity to serve my community. It's also where I started my research career as far as like health disparities and looking more into population health. So I've worked a lot in studies including stroke occurrence and high blood pressure in the Latino and African American community. Being someone that, you know, is from a low socioeconomic status and grew up in this community, I feel like to stay in this community as a provider will give me the opportunity to advocate for my patients. I can't begin to tell you the amount of times my patients have told me, wow, I'm so proud of you, like your parents would be so proud of you, like it's something that's so rare that we rarely see. And it's just that comfort aspect that you can just see patients relax when someone that's like a native speaker that understands where they come from, like walks through that door. So it's like an immediate connection. Being first generation, honestly, this graduation, it's something that my family and I have been looking forward to really my entire life. My mom has made a lot of sacrifices for me to be able to achieve this dream. And so graduating will mean everything to my family. However the virtual graduation pans out, I definitely want to make sure that all my loved ones are part of that today.
Nice.
So again, apologies if there were technical difficulties, and apologies for the editor's one bad decision, which you can see was including pictures of me. I hope I didn't ruin the video, but that is something that we produced to highlight Aria. And as I mentioned, she will be staying as part of our community as she goes into residency. So we're very proud.
But is she one of the graduates now working in the hospital?
You know, I didn't answer that. I neglected to ask her that question. I know that about 60% of our students have signed up for what we call the Columbia Student Service Corps. Steve, I didn't ask her that. I can, but
Yeah, please. That adds an extra dimension to the story. Okay. Any questions for Ross?
Sally?
Just a
All right. Very good.
Just a
All right. All right. Is there somebody? Domingo, you have a question?
No, Sally had a question.
Oh, Sally.
Just a comment. Lucky for her and lucky for us that New York Presbyterian kept their family practice program.
Well, that was the PNS. Domingo, do you also have a question?
No, but I did send you the article via email.
Okay, thanks a lot.
And Paula, if you could share the video link with everybody so they can see it on their own, perhaps with better sound.
Okay. Do we have the video link?
Yes, I will share it with everyone.
Okay, very good. All right, thank you. Okay, Betty, are you with us?
Can you hear me? Oh, boy.
Oh, my God.
Do you have us in more than one place? Like in your phone and computer?
Hold on a second.
Oh, my God.
Okay. Betty, I just unmuted your cell phone and muted your computer.
I'm going to turn it off. Hang in here.
There we go.
I mean,
You're good.
I
We
just,
can hear you better now. We can hear you way clearer now.
okay, one second though. Ross, can I just say that if there's an opportunity later on where we can join in a memorial or something for Dr. Breen, wish you would let us know.
I will do that.
And I know her family has set up a foundation.
So, what was that?
Family has set up a foundation to raise money for mental health care services for physicians and other health.
Okay, if you have that information, forward it to us. All right, Betty, are you?
Yes, I was just trying to, I had the phone on as well as the computer, so can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you fine. Yeah.
Okay. Well, as many of you know, we've been in the news lately, not in the big way here. I thought I would give you a bit of an update as to what's happening and a little bit of a picture as to what's happening. When we last, can you hear me, or is it an echo?
There is a little bit of an echo, but go ahead.
Okay. When we last met, I had reported a total of 20 deaths, COVID positive deaths in the nursing home. And New York State had been reporting 13. They were doing that as recently as last week. That number that the state was reporting was not up to date, and that has been fixed. And as of the 29th of April, we had 29 positive, COVID positive, 21 COVID positive deaths, excuse me, in the nursing home. However, as of the 29th, we also had 43 suspected deaths in the nursing home, COVID positive patients. Why are we suspected at this point? Part of the problem we've really had two types of problems. One is we really were running very low on PPE. We always had enough for the day, but we rarely had enough for more than one day. That has been or is being fixed. The other problem we had is we had no testing equipment of any kind. In fact, we just got some testing equipment last week. In addition, the Department of Health has come by and is testing all of the residents in Isabella so that we will have a firm number as to how many residents are actually COVID positive. We have had over 200 employees who have been afflicted with COVID-19 and 3 who have died. We were reporting, when the total number of 98 was reported, we were reporting people who had transferred to the hospital and had passed away in the hospital. We have been told through the governor's office that that is not our number to report, and a number that is to be reported by the hospitals. So that will, going forward, we will be doing so accordingly. With regard to communication and what our practice has been, as of March 11th, we had notified all families that visiting hours or visiting was being suspended because of the federal order to suspend visitation in facilities of our type. We contacted all families between March 12th and March 16th to give them an update about their resident and also to let them know about FaceTime, which is a method of communication that we were setting up with our recreation department. We also then sent letters to the families on March 25th, April 10th, April 18th, and April 28th, apprising them of updates. As residents changed in their circumstances in terms of getting sick, they weren't already sick, we would call the families and let them know that. We did a lot of communication on our website and social media platforms during all of this time. What else can I tell you? We have set up two telephone numbers that can be used, one by the family. So anyone who has questions regarding the status of a loved one will be able to call this particular number, and I will give it to you. It is 212-342-9217. We will have social workers who are bilingual, who will follow up on the inquiry that comes in from families and be able to respond to the situation regarding their loved one. We also have a communication number, which will post pursuant to requirements of the CDC, any new cases that we have of COVID positive situations within the nursing home. And the number for that is 212-342-9665. And that particular information is updated every day by 5 p.m. We have had some residents who have gone home. We have suggested in all our correspondence with families that if anyone wanted to take their family member home, they are welcome to do so, and some have. As you can imagine, that as the situation became more serious, families began to look at that option carefully. What else can I tell you? We are struggling and with PPE. We have gotten a good amount right now. We are very grateful to New York Presbyterian and to the efforts that have been made by our elected officials to help us get some materials, and especially Gail Brewer has been amazing. And also we appreciate the efforts of Carmen De La Rosa, Assemblywoman Carmen De La Rosa. But it's been a struggle, I will tell you that. It's been a very devastating situation for the people who work at Isabella, as obviously the residents and their families. You can only imagine that if you were a family member and has not been able to see your loved one since March 12th, and it is now May 7th, how frustrating and how upsetting it must be, because you're dealing with people that are very frail and have comorbidities and all kinds of other conditions, and it's very difficult. And while FaceTime is a good option, not all residents are able to participate in FaceTime, either because they're too sick or they don't have the capacity to communicate. So it's a difficult situation, to be sure. We have gotten offers from the community to help and work with our recreation therapy department to enhance communications via cards and letters and phone calls, and we very much appreciate that. It is a very difficult situation, and we're coping as best we can. Any questions?
Yeah, let me ask you, the number of deaths that occurred at the nursing home, those were being regularly reported to the state, the ones that were confirmed positive cases. Were you also reporting to the state the number of suspected cases of
Yes.
people who were dying at the nursing home?
Yes.
Okay, but those numbers were not being made public by the state's decision?
That's correct.
Now, were you also reporting to the state the number of people who were dying, who were positive, who were dying at the hospitals?
Yes, and that was, to be honest with you, that was a mistake in the sense that that was, as the governor clarified it, that was a report that the hospitals needed to make, not the nursing home.
But you in fact were making those reports to the state?
Yes.
Yep.
On both people who were dying at hospitals who were found to be positive, as well as those suspected of being positive?
Yes.
So the 36 or so of the 98 who actually died in the hospitals were also being reported to the state?
Yes, the ones that died, I'm looking at I'm looking at the suspected in the hospital were 12 and confirmed in the hospital were 26. So
Right,
you got
38.
38 people. But that wasn't supposed to be something we were to report. That was for the hospitals to report.
But you're telling me that in fact you did report it?
Yes. I need to explain something. There has been a lot of, this whole system that the state set up for reporting was a changing model, if you will. We were reporting every piece of information we could gather. And when the state clarified who was to report what, it became apparent that all we were to report were the circumstances in the nursing home, not the hospital. So in a way, we were over-reporting. But we didn't know that at the time, obviously.
Okay, but all of these deaths were known to you. Obviously, when a resident dies, you're aware of that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. All right. Well, obviously, this is a situation which, which turned out to be much more, have a much greater impact than any of us ever thought possible.
Yeah. It's very difficult for the staff. Morale, as you can imagine, has been pushed to the limit. They've been working nonstop with no relief. We've had a lot of absentee. We have, well, as I mentioned, over 200 staff members that have become affected by COVID-19.
Has anybody analyzed whether or not a lot of these people were maybe were living on the same floor and became infected because they were intermingling with one another?
I don't know how you would know that, because part of the problem with COVID-19 is that you can be, there's a transmission period prior to showing symptoms. So, it's a tricky thing.
And you were running so low on PPE that from one day to the next, you weren't sure whether or not you would have a supply of PPE?
Right, at the beginning. That's very true.
Were you
keep in mind
contacting
that the priority in healthcare at that time were the hospitals. And rightly so, because they were getting the bulk of the cases. But what was really left in the background, and I think is when the study is finally done as to the impact of this whole COVID pandemic, I think one of the things that will come out of it is the fact that nobody pays sufficient attention to long-term care, whether it's the nursing home or home care or hospice programs, you name it. These were the most vulnerable people on the planet, and yet they were left, not the people, but the organizations that provide care were left without sufficient resources and had to go begging, if you will, for help. And just recently got some of the things we need.
Did you tell the state health department how desperate you were, that you didn't know from one day to the next whether you had PPE?
We had enough. We never had it so that people that day didn't have enough equipment. We might have enough for another day, 24-hour supply. But it was very touch and go for a long time there. And we were dealing with companies in China and Taiwan and you name it, all across the Far East to try to get supplies. We weren't alone. I know you know that was going on in other hospitals, etc. So,
okay. And you also alerted the elected officials to this issue, right?
Yes, all of them, yes.
So they knew how desperate you were on the PPE?
Yes.
All right.
And that's why we were able to get some very nice help from Gail Brewer and also from Carmen De La Rosa.
Right. All right. Are there committee members with questions?
Yes, I have one. My hand was up.
Yeah,
Tanya?
Yes. My question, Betty, is two. One question I have is for the suspected COVID. How are we going to know? Are we going to be able to verify that they actually, those suspected ones that are in actuality were actual cases? How are you going to do that to finalize those numbers? Are you able to do that? Because I would like to know how many of those suspected are actually, are actually COVID cases. And then I just kind of want to know, because in the news stories, and I know it was, in the media, but some of the families were talking about, some of the statements made by some of the families of the people in the centers. Do you have any response, like in terms of what they're saying, in terms of not having access or not being given information? You know, those are the two questions I
Right.
had. Okay.
Okay, well, the number of suspected should go down now dramatically because we finally have testing equipment. And we finally have the help of the Department of Health to test everybody now, this week. So that number should go down. The problem you have, if someone passes away and you suspected it was COVID, you really can't prove it after they passed away. They obviously had other conditions or they wouldn't have been in the nursing home to start with. And you suspect that it was COVID, but you don't know for sure because you can't test them. So those who have passed away, unfortunately, will always be in the category of suspected. But going forward, hopefully, we'll have the testing capability to be able to continually monitor and test residents on an ongoing basis. So we should be able to resolve that problem. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, I mean, I guess what I know the people who passed away. It would seem that, even if that were to happen, I know you have to get permission from families and this is kind of complicated, but, it'd be nice for us to know, like, what the real numbers are. It just would be a way that we could get certainty in terms of that. But then the second question about the families and not having access, to their family members, and have you had contact with those families that were in the news reports and talk to them about that? Because there was a couple of them saying they didn't have access, they didn't get information, they weren't allowed to to know what was going on. Have you all spoken to those people? And where is that?
I haven't personally spoken to them. I know our social service department did. Excuse me. One thing I will tell you, we set up FaceTime early on, really, right when the whole thing started. And then we have about 9 recreation therapy staff that do their FaceTime. Half of them got sick with COVID. So we lost the services. We've had to cut out the FaceTime for a couple of weeks until they were able to return. Now they resume that. But the other frustration for families is that they really want to visit. That's what they really want. They may take the word of a social worker that things are fine, but that can just last so long. They really want to come in and visit. You can understand why. On a human level, this is someone you love dearly and you haven't seen. And it's very frustrating for them, very, very difficult. And the staff does the best it can to keep people apprised. But, to some families, that's not, not enough. And I can't blame them. I understand how they feel.
Okay. All right. But Maria, I see your hand, but I have to go on the list here. It's Sally, Yomaris, and then Domingo, and then to Maria. Sally, you have a question?
I also want to ask a question.
Okay, Mr. Mazur, I will recognize you in due course.
And add me as well, Catherine. Sorry, because I can't raise my hand on the screen.
The 200
can't raise your hand? Okay.
The 200 staff members that tested positive were out of a staff of how large?
I can't, it's hard for me to hear you.
The 200 staff members were out of a staff of how many?
Sally, could you repeat that?
What's the total staff at Isabella?
The total staff is 905.
All right, so, and 240 would...
The exact number, I know it was more than 200 that got sick over the last couple of months. Yeah.
So it's a quarter of the staff.
Yeah.
Okay.
Steve, I want to ask questions too. It's Barbara.
I'm sorry, who is that? Oh, Barbara, okay.
It's muted for a while.
Okay, Yomaris.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much, Steve, for giving me this opportunity. My question is in regards to the suspected. When you have a page, when you have somebody there, don't you keep a daily chart of the status of the patient, like that you can see is suspected because he showed symptoms? Did you keep? I mean, it was it suspected because you saw the symptoms of COVID in that patient?
Yes.
Or is it suspected just because they died, because they just died? Okay, it was COVID. Or is there a record that says that that person had the symptoms? That's what I want to know.
Well, I'm not on site, so I can't speak personally, but from my understanding of it, when they began to demonstrate symptoms, a cough, or some other symptom related to COVID, that was noted.
Okay, so it's noted on a chart. So if like if the person has two or more symptoms of the COVID, that means that person probably had the COVID. Okay, that's what I wanted to know, because it's supposed to be based on symptoms, so it's not, they just died and that's it. Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Yes. And then let me tell you, this is a citywide issue. I mean, the city updated all of its statistics about a month ago. Pauline is probably not on the call anymore, but you know, we found, the city found that 3,000 or 4,000 cases were suspected, and they added them to the regular totals. Jay, you want to go ahead?
Thank you.
Okay.
Oh, I thought it was me, Steve.
No, I have to deal with the
No,
committee
yes,
members
I
first.
do want.
Domingo, I'm sorry, I have to wait. Jay, next.
Okay, now, I had certain questions based on the fact that when I spoke to Congressman Espaillat's office and Councilman Rodriguez, there were certain discrepancies between what they asserted and what was asserted in the written response from Isabella, the one which began by attacking the press for sensationalizing it and ended with threatening to sue people who spread that information around. And so I would suggest the best way to untangle this tangled web is for the board to hold a public forum on this important question, primarily but not exclusively relating to the questions around Isabella. So that we could find out what the accurate story is.
Well, I understand your point, but I think my understanding is that the State Health Department is investigating the situation, and I think if we want to get to the bottom of it, we should probably wait to see what the State Health Department determines. I don't think that we have that capability. And listen, I would love to have a public forum, but the only way you can do it nowadays is via Zoom.
I think it's an immediate concern.
Yeah, well, it is an immediate concern. The State Health Department is looking into the situation. I'll contact them tomorrow and see where it stands. Catherine.
Thank you, Steve. I have a few questions. One is I'm incredibly curious in terms of like, where is the union on this? The fact that, you know, and early when all of this was happening, you know, you rightfully so raised the shortage on PPE, and a lot of the fears that workers had. But the fact is that if you guys were running so low on a day-to-day basis and you guys were only using thermometers, is it that you were, you know, were there screeners done in terms of exposure to COVID? Did the problem lie in terms of reusing PPE, or people not, you know, perhaps not disclosing? So, you know, I have questions around the union for workers, and with that, in terms of what were the roles of the folks who did pass on from the staff? You know, were they front-facing nurses? Were they part of the janitorial staff? And in light of and I guess this kind of goes also with Jay's question or point, and because I'm a little confused, to be honest, right? In that the elected officials knew you guys were short on PPE, yet they held a press conference as if this wasn't a surprise, right? So is there a gap, or is there, you know, or what was the issue, right? Because clearly for the elected officials, this was all a surprise to them, to be able to know that the numbers and the situation was so dire, yet the institution and elected officials were in communication for at least over a month. of what was going on in this time. So, you know, for me, I'm really curious in terms of the workers. Obviously, morale, as Tanya said, must be incredibly low. But then there's also worker safety, along with the residents, and, you know, the unions should have been like, we need PPE today, the same way that the Nurses Association did from NYP, and they came to this meeting.
Well, the union has been supportive all the way along. I will say that. We never we were never without the right proper equipment for our staff, whether they were environmental workers or dining workers or nurses' aides, whatever. People would not go on the unit unless they were properly attired. So the problem was not that we didn't have the equipment for that day. We just didn't have enough of a stockpile that you would really need to be able to be comfortable in going forward. So it has been always a scramble to get the right quantity in for the future. The union has been working with us, and the union represents a lot of facilities, and everybody was going through the same thing. All the facilities, whether it's a nursing home or a hospital, were scrambling for what they call PPE for everybody. So it's been a very trying situation that's been universal, if you will, in this city. So, if anything, the union has been working with us on that, and we have been working with them to try to get as much as we can.
Okay, Barbara?
Question, Catherine.
Oh, okay, yeah. A couple things. Well, first of all, I mean, I am a numbers person. You've given a lot of numbers, Betty, but I guess I'd like just a simple XY grid, you know, across the top, March, April, and then May to date, and then down the vertical column, the COVID deaths that occurred at Isabella, the COVID deaths that occurred at Presbyterian, the COVID deaths that you suspected but weren't tested, and the other deaths for a total, the total deaths that occurred over that 2.5-month period, because these numbers just keep absolutely being fluid. The other thing I wanted to ask was, how many deaths occurred this time last year? For example, usually the average number of deaths in New York City per year is about 50,000. If you look at 2016, 17, 18, it runs about 50,000 a year, or about 150 a day. And then if you look at it, you say, well, this is flu season, etc. Let's say it's maybe 155 per day. Well, we've been running, of course, as you see, 300 to 700 or more a day, which tells you how COVID has hit this city. And in the small, I'd like to know how many people we were losing at Isabella last March, April, and May this time last year, which gives us a sense of how COVID has hit Isabella.
Okay, I can tell you this, I can get that information, but Barbara, on average, in our nursing home, depending again on the season of the year and so forth, between 16 and 25 residents a month will pass away.
Okay.
On average.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's important to know.
Happen. Keep in mind, it's been really 7 weeks since the middle of March, or actually, if you want to say March and April, it's really been 2 months. Yeah.
Now, does that include residents who die after being transferred to another facility?
We don't, you mean what other facility?
Well, to a hospital. In other words, a resident has been at your place for a year, has a heart attack, and then you transfer them to Presbyterian and they die 3 hours later.
I don't know the answer to that. I'm
well,
not sure.
That's
I
important.
can get that information for you.
Well, that's important information, because that really is someone who really was in your care. And my second comment is this, and I would like that breakdown. My second comment is this: when the governor says, oh, don't count those deaths of people you transferred from Isabella to Presbyterian on your count, that's because my feeling is that's because he wants the nursing home count reduced, because he's appropriately so under fire for returning ill patients with COVID to the nursing homes. and that causing potentially thousands of unnecessary deaths. And I think that the Community Board 12 should have a resolution against that, because that's lying with statistics. In other words, when someone contracts COVID at Isabella and then becomes so sick that they must be transferred to a hospital and then potentially die at Presbyterian, that death should be counted as an Isabella contracted death. That is lying with statistics to put it on Presbyterian. And I believe that we should have a resolution against the governor finding a way to play with statistics. That is a nursing home death.
I cannot comment on the
You cannot comment. I'm speaking to my fellow committee members.
These are his standards.
Well, why are his standards that? Because he wants to reduce the number of nursing home deaths in his body count. That's why. Because he's clearly from the people at Cobble Hill in Brooklyn and other places have called him to count for that. And it's all over the media how this has happened. Because he sent people, sick people, into nursing homes, which is like sending kids with measles into a kindergarten class.
Okay, but these are residents. These are not people who were sent from the. Unless I am Betty, are these people who were sent from the hospital to the nursing home, or from the nursing home? These were already nursing home residents, weren't they?
I don't. You know, that's a good question. I'm not sure. It could have been two things. It could have been someone who went from. If someone went to the hospital and returned to Isabella and then passed away in Isabella, that's counted as an Isabella statistic.
Right. Okay.
Someone went to the hospital and passed away at the hospital, that's a hospital statistic. Now, if the hospital discharged somebody who was brand new to Isabella, which has happened, and the person passed away in the nursing home, it's a nursing home death. That's how he looked at it.
Okay, well, that seems to be what Barbara's focused on. So I think it would be helpful to have that information. How many people who were not previously at Isabella and were then sent to Isabella after being treated at the hospital, then passed away. That
is one statistic, but the other statistic is patients that were at Isabella, and is again, COVID at Isabella, became very ill, were then transferred to the hospital and died in New York Presbyterian. The governor has said, oh, don't count that as an Isabella death. That was a mistake. Count that as a Presbyterian death. I say that is lying with statistics, because the point is the person became ill due to conditions at a nursing home, and that is a nursing home death.
Well, I think for the purpose of doing data collection, you have to know where the deaths actually occurred. But I would agree that we should, but to have a better overall view of what the situation is at the nursing home, you should also know how many of their patients actually expired because of COVID, whether they died at the nursing home or at the hospital. We should know that. But I wouldn't say that that it's necessarily lying with statistics, although it certainly doesn't give you the full story. But, well, maybe. Yeah. Any other committee members? Okay, Domingo, it's to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for recognizing me. Now, I have multi-layered questions, though, Betty, because there seems to be some sort of miscommunication, or I want to start off, like, I'll answer the question, and if possible, you could just provide me with a response as I ask it. So, for instance, there is this whole article, these press conferences called, where they are, and I would also like to commend the work that, because what people don't understand is that Isabella employs a lot of people from this community. So when we hear X amount of deaths, just know that these are individuals that live in Washington Heights, Inwood, etc. So I want to commend you for all the great work and for the opportunities you provide to people in this community. Now, there is this notion of that there was no communication from Isabella in regards to PPE and the lack of supplies within that within Isabella. Is that true?
Well, first of all, I guess I have two things to say. As I mentioned before, we always had enough PPE for that day. That's for starters. And second of all, we did communicate with our elected officials, with our vendors, with the community. People called in and asked how they could help. So we were communicating frequently and all over the place about our need for PPE because we were desperate and we had not a lot of supply for the next day or the day after. And we were very concerned that we increase the supply. So we were out everywhere.
So basically what you're saying is that there were communications with individuals, with elected officials, as far as that the scarcity in PPE within a vulnerable institution within our community, correct?
Yes.
All right. Excuse me,
said
Steve. Let me finish, please. Now, my other question is in regards to PPE and its current status. Would you say that you have all the supplies you need in order to maintain a safe working environment for all your staff members and the people who are within your institution?
Yes, we do, but I will tell you this, as you probably know, this isn't going away anytime soon. This virus is, unfortunately going to be with us for quite a while. So our efforts to secure PPE are going to be ongoing.
Okay, because just to say, because I get people that contact me since we're doing the care packages from New York Presbyterian saying transporters, people who are transporting individuals to the hospitals don't have the proper PPE equipment or not receiving it. So there seems to be so many different stories roaming around about there being supplies, but it seems like the supplies is staying, I'm assuming, at a certain stage and not necessarily trickling down to every single employee. So in your case, would you say what you're telling me is that at the moment, every single employee within Isabella has the proper equipment to be able to, the proper PPE?
Yes. In fact, we have a station set up in the facility, and every day it's manned, if you will, by individuals, even somebody from my own staff, who works with a group of people to make sure that anybody that needs equipment goes there and picks it up and gets it right away. So there should be no problem. And we make sure, every day we do this and we record who came in for what, and we keep an accurate record of what we have, what we distributed, and we are very certain and very concerned that everybody has the right equipment every day.
And if you were to ask the community for some sort of support, what would you say is an area that you would say, this is where we could get support, like this is where we need more support? Is there any particular area that you're looking for more support?
We're constantly looking for gowns and shields.
Face shields?
Gowns and shields, yeah.
All right, so I have a friend who is able to get, because my thing is, does Isabella as an institution have the funds to purchase these shields?
I'm sorry, what was the last part?
Does Isabella as an institution have the funds to purchase face shields?
Yes.
Also, what I'll do is
make them available. That's a requirement.
Okay, so what I'll do is there's because we had 100 shields donated to us by an individual who has over 3,000 face shields. He donated for our volunteers. So what I'll do is I'll put you in communication with the person, but he seems to have a pretty decent stockpile that could potentially, could work something out.
Okay.
All right.
That's fantastic. That may make this entire meeting worthwhile. Thank you, Domingo.
Thank you.
Along those same lines, Betty, do you have any
who is
partnership with any of the hospitals in the area for that sort of equipment?
Carol?
Do you have any partnership with any of the hospitals in the area for that sort of equipment?
Well, New York Presbyterian has been very good at providing us with some equipment. And we have been working with them, and we're very grateful for the help they provided us.
Okay, again, Natalie, you have a question?
Hi, so I just wanted to comment, really quickly. Betty, thank you so much for how, you reach out to us and give regular updates about what Isabella was doing, but also sounded a very early alarm about how the hospice and long-term care was not eligible for some of the massive stocks of PPE that were coming in. So that I think was very important to get out there, and we appreciate you for doing that. And I do remember that that was 1st of April that you reached out and let us know that the OEM was not providing because you weren't listed as approved providers because you weren't a hospital. So it was a gap, and it was one that you helped shine a light on. So thank you. I wanted also just to make a comment on, a lot of when we play with here, the numbers and the metrics, and I'm a good math geek like anybody else, but it's about practice too. And I believe that what we have is to understand what the standard practice is, and if there are in fact standard practices for how the institutions define whether or not a person has been discharged to the hospital or whether or not they are still actively, what they used to call, in the case of my family members, holding the bed, so that they were simultaneously short-term hospitalized and still a patient of the long-term care institution, or whether the long-term care institution discharges them to the hospital, then does a readmit when if the person comes back from the hospital. So I think I'm gonna guess that based on just my experience as a civilian being a caregiver of elders in my family, there was no consistency even within the same institution a lot of times, because information flowed back and forth between the institution and then the hospital providing whatever acute care was needed in an emergency. It was, we're all at the mercy of when people whose priorities it is to provide care can actually sit and file paperwork. So I think that those numbers are gonna be hard to get at. And that doesn't mean we don't keep trying, but I think we have to understand that the questions are gonna be a lot more complicated than a grid.
All right, Maria.
Okay, thank you so much, Steve. Let me just say that I hear comments and accusations and everything else from all of the board members and the news media, elected officials, including myself, and everything else. Number one, I'd like to say to Betty Lehman, you are a hero. You are a hero because you have taken this burden on your shoulder, because you are the only one that we have contact with at Isabella when we need something from Isabella, to have someone of our relatives, friends, to be, taking care in your facilities. I am the proxy holder of one of my neighbors that fell from her bed, and it's a very short story. Fell from her bed about February. I was sent to the hospital, took to the hospital. They found that she had not fractures, that she was all right, but she needed some rehab on her legs. She was transferred through Betty. I secured a bed there for her, a room, very nice, and she would start getting treatment. And then this, virus craziness happens. When I keep in contact with them every day, and I said to Betty, "What do you think I should do?" She said, "Well, let me take a look into this situation." They put this lady in a room, and they were testing her and observing her. They found that she had no problems, but at that time they couldn't discharge her into her house. So she stayed there for about like three or 4 weeks, I believe, Betty. She came home and she's okay. But the nurses and the social workers that were taking care of her were very concerned about her situation, because the woman is 100 years old to begin with. But they kept me abreast of everything through FaceTime. I could communicate with her. They wouldn't allow me to go and visit. No papers, no nothing like that. But through the telephone, we communicated, and the staff of Isabela was very good on this particular case. Okay, now, when we heard about people dying in Isabela, we have to realize that Isabela is not a medical facility, it's a rehab place, and also a residence for people that have no place to go. So as a matter of fact, I have someone right now there that's been living there for 4 years, and he's been treated nicely. He doesn't have it, you know, he's not, what do you call that thing? She's been taken care like a resident. So when I hear that someone said, and that they pumping people on the back without notifying, you know, family, I think that that was a really uncalled for. Institution, like Domingo said, we have an institution here that provides services to all of us, and we need to continue supporting them, but they have to be transparent. And I hope that from the future, from now on, we hear about the good numbers and the bad numbers. I don't care what happened last year, Barbara, I'm sorry, I don't want to compare what happened last year or 10 years ago to what is happening now in these 3 months that we are living of. This is a special crisis that we are living. We cannot just compare what happened other months and other years to what's happening right now. My point is that we need to make sure that from now on, Isabela reports everything, and we have to wait for the Department of Health to give us the number and that they can certify that those are the real numbers. And then we can take steps after that. Right now, public forum and community rallies is not important. We need the numbers, and we want to make sure that Isabela has the resources to provide the services to the staff, to all the employees, and to people who reside there because they have no place else to go. Thank you.
Okay, Maria, I would agree with you that in the future, well, I would like to have all of the good numbers and the bad numbers, so we have a complete picture. But I think Barbara's point is also valid. It's good to know what the threshold number is for the regular
Steve, let me clarify to her. What I was saying, it's Barbara. I want to clarify what she said to me.
Okay.
I was comparing, making a comparison to last year, merely to compare last year to this year so that we can sort of assume that any increase is due to COVID. It is no comment on Isabela.
Right, I know.
It's only a comment on COVID. Okay?
Yeah, I think it's a valid point. I agree with you too. Okay, is someone?
Steve, I agree with Barbara. Now I stand corrected, but also we have to make sure that there are other facilities within our communities, and they haven't been challenged. We haven't asked numbers from them. There are other residential facilities, and we need to hear from them also. And I haven't heard none of us question that. So just because of the good relationship that we have with Isabela, it's important that we know how they're doing. But my point also is, Steve, whatever happens to all the other residents, senior residents within Community Planning Board 12, where are their numbers, and are they accountable? Are they not accountable?
Well, that's another good point. We have at least one other nursing home that we never hear from. Never. The Fort Tryon nursing home. Never hear from them. Okay. There's some. We have Angela. Is there an Angela?
No, that was my mother.
No. I have somebody who wants to ask a question. Angela?
Oh.
Is there an Angela? No?
Yeah, but I think we have to give her permission to talk. Hold on. Yeah, there we go. Give me 1 second. There you go.
All right. Angela, are you there?
He's there. I just switched over. She should be able to ask her question.
Hi. Hello, everyone. This is Angela Fernandez. How are you?
Oh, fine. Go ahead.
So I just wanted to understand my one question, and it was asked before, and I thought it was worth following up. Betty, do you know the staff positions of the 3 staff members that passed away? That question was for Betty.
Yeah, I think she's going to look.
Oh,
You're on
okay.
mute,
I
Betty.
didn't know if you had heard, I didn't know if you had heard me.
But Betty, we don't have your,
She has
we
to
can't hear
unmute
you.
herself. She has to unmute herself.
Yeah.
Hi, okay, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I know that one person was an LPN who had been with us for many years, and was very well liked, and it was heartbreaking to the staff that he died. I don't know the work of the other two people. I believe one was a respiratory therapist, but I can't be sure because I haven't gotten that information. These deaths happened within the last few days.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Was that Commissioner Fernandez?
Yes, yes.
Oh, well, thank you for joining us.
Sure, no, absolutely.
Okay,
Thank
it's wonderful to have you.
Thank you so much.
It's wonderful to have you in state government as well. Any other questions?
I just wanted to make a statement.
Is that Ms. Hertzberg again?
Yes, gosh darn it. It's me one more time. It is true that the nursing homes have been hard hit not having PEs, but I think it's important to point out that all of the senior centers were giving out food, were acting as distribution sites, and none of them had PPEs either. And we were out there doing the work anyway. And only now, this week, we've gotten donations of masks and gloves. And somebody called me and said they're donating hand sanitizer. And not in the numbers we need, but at least it's a good start. So I think it's really important to understand that there's a lot of frontline services that have nothing but good hearts, good efforts, and no self-protection of any type. So nursing homes are critical, but so are these other services.
All right, very good point. Very good.
I want to ask one more question to Betty. Betty, you stated that if a family member wished to, because of the situation, take their member out of Isabella, that they could, okay? Now, I'm close with a family that lives in my building, okay? They were trying and looking into that. Their family member is currently in rehab at Isabella, has been for some time. I said to them, well, aren't you just going to get, the person out of there, even against medical advice? And they said, we can't do it against medical advice because otherwise the family member will not be eligible for any services such as visiting nurse association, home attendant, or anything like that. Physical therapy, home attendant, or anything. Could you check if that is true?
Yes, if you, I won't ask you to do this in this forum, but if you give me a call, Barbara, I will be happy to follow up on that particular case.
Okay.
My phone number is, so you know, my phone number is
your phone number. Okay, but in other words, is there a distinction between it's okay to go home or if you do it against medical?
What is your number, Betty? Let her give her the
well,
number.
my cell number is 917-881-9131. I'll repeat, 917-881-9131.
All right.
And to answer your question, Barbara, I'm not familiar with that particular prohibition, but these are extraordinary times.
Yes, extraordinary.
And so I don't know, if that applies.
Yeah, but that's the distinction.
Yeah.
Against medical advice or, well, it's okay, we'd rather she stay, but it's okay. That's the distinction.
Yeah, I'll find out for you. If you call me, I'll find out.
Thanks.
Okay. Any other questions for Betty?
No.
Okay. All right. So Betty, I would ask you if there is a report that you receive from the State Health Department, no matter what it says, I would ask that you furnish it to us without any delay. That I think it's important that we have that information and that we find out what the findings are from the investigation or inspections that have been undertaken by the State Health Department. I think that's crucial to, I think, helping to clear the air in this situation.
Okay.
All right, moving on to old business. The current report from the Department of Design and Construction on the 4 sewer and water main installation projects is actually pretty good. Well, one of the projects has been completed at 100%, which is the water main project in the area between 165th and 172nd Streets, Fort Washington and Haven Avenue. The water main project on the east side, Edgecombe Avenue between 165th and 170th Streets, covers portions of Amsterdam Avenue and Jumel Place, is 99% completed. The project up in Inwood is at 65%, and I'm making a further inquiry as to why that one seems to be lagging behind. I also received a detailed complaint from a resident there, which I am forwarding to DDC for them to respond to. And the water main project in the area east of Broadway in the 170s and 180s is only at 20%. I will forward this report to the members of the committee and to the community board office. Is there any other old business? Under new business, Mr. Cochran, you have something you want to offer.
Yes, hi. Thank you. I emailed around to committee members. I don't know if there's any non-committee members still on the phone, but yeah, I was just thinking this is usually for probably traffic and transportation, but given that I think, you know, New York Presbyterian Columbia has been doing wonderful work caring for our community during this pandemic. I thought it was proper to do a street co-naming in honor of all the healthcare workers that have been on the front lines of this from the very beginning. You know, this is a pandemic of our lifetimes. I don't think anyone was around during the Spanish flu, but you know, so I think really to honor them and their sacrifices and their heroism, basically, to name the, you know, and I'm open to if people would like a different street, but I was just thinking 168th Street, right there between Broadway and Fort Wash, to name it just in honor of the healthcare workers in general, who are often, you know, the unsung heroes in all this.
I tell you, I think it's a great idea. I might prefer Fort Washington Avenue between 165th and 168th Street, but that was given some kind of a name, wasn't it? After Herbert Irving.
Yes.
I think this would be an improvement over that. But 168th Street is certainly suitable. Is would either Anna or Ross be on the call still? No.
Barbara, can I speak?
Yeah. Are you asking Barbara? Barbara, go ahead.
Oh, okay. I agree with the sentiment. I don't agree with the execution of it. What I'm thinking of is we now have that plaza at the medical center there, that Haven Plaza. And I think that when all this is over, and I had sent Daryl a statue thing that was done in Oklahoma honoring women's veterans. Do you see that, Daryl? Look at your.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see your email. No.
Okay, look at your cell phone. Look at your messages. I sent you but basically what I would recommend is when this is all over, maybe a year or so, right? And it settles, I think more important would be to do some form of statue thing there in the Haven Plaza honoring with a monument, in memory, not exactly in memory, but in recognition of the pandemic of 2020, and with
Well, yeah, that's a good point, and I think, this
with a
idea,
fountain of life, a fountain of
this
life.
idea doesn't, live in a vacuum. I think there's a few things like a street co-naming, I think is a common practice, but this would be unique, I think, because it usually is for individuals. So the fact that this would be for a group, is one thing. And also to what you're talking about, and I really hope in the future we do this. I even, like you said, have spots in mind for our community for some sort of COVID memorial. But I think that is a separate thing than honoring the healthcare workers. But I think that they can both coexist, absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Do any other committee members want to comment on this?
I know Maria's had her hand up for a
Maria,
while.
I'll get to Maria. I'll get to her. She's giving me the
Oh,
finger.
right.
again.
Sorry, I forgot. Yeah. Okay.
I see she's giving me the finger. Any other committee members?
I have a comment.
Who is that?
Sally, and then
Sally, I think
Oh,
it's a
go ahead,
great-
Sally.
I think it's a great idea. I just want to make sure that we don't leave out the other hospital workers. It's not just people providing health care, but it's people sweeping the floors. It's people, driving equipment and that kind of stuff. So I just want to make sure it's broad enough to recognize
Yeah.
the hospital
Yeah.
workers.
And I
Well,
think in the draft resolution that I sent around, I definitely put in like administration, but maybe we could add some more, beef that up a bit, because absolutely, I think just the people cleaning gowns, cleaning the floors, all that stuff absolutely should be recognized.
And I love the idea.
And actually, I would also like to, even though I would also like to see a reference to the EMTs and paramedics, who I think are not being properly recognized they're really on the front line. They're the first people who get to see many of these patients and deal with them.
Yeah, it's in the draft. It's in his draft. It's in his draft. He did mention EMTs. There's nursing professionals, EMTs, social workers, administrators, and others vital to the continuity of care.
Very
so
good.
I think it's very comprehensive. I like it, and I like the idea of 168th Street.
Yes.
That's the whole strip,
Yes. Right.
is where everything is. So I like it. I think it's a great idea.
Yeah.
And the other idea with that spot in particular is that it's for those who may not be going over to Fort Washington. They'll at least see it when they get out of the subway.
Absolutely. Visibility. Absolutely.
Yeah. Catherine?
Any other committee members?
Is she?
Yeah, there was Maria, and I have a question, Daryl. Are you married to the name of Healthcare Heroes Way?
Oh, I thought you were asking me something else. I'm like, no, I'm single. But no, I'm open. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I agree. Like, I think it's a great resolution. I think for me, and maybe it's just a personal thing, I gotta kind of think about it too. In terms of this Healthcare Heroes Way and thinking of something that is going to ideally withstand multiple generations. And for me, it's like considering how NYP and Columbia have a whole host of issues. And despite, obviously we know that a lot of folks have been, how would I explain it? I understand, and I'm not trying to like diss or put down any healthcare workers, but I know that like there are folks within that institution, personally speaking, that are not heroes in my book, right? Like there's still some really bad numbers when it comes to even New York Presbyterian. So I'm just trying to, I really love that you included the Florence Nightingale quote, and I'm just thinking about something perhaps along the, like, not necessarily like Florence Nightingale way, but something around the pledge and how folks have come up. So if I can think about wording and if you're open to wording, but I think for me, it's just that concern of like, that's the street of Healthcare Heroes Way, yet, for example, the statistics around disrespectful birth standards at NYP are alarming and disproportionate. So I'm just thinking about longevity.
What?
Around birthing.
Oh, yeah.
So women of color and birth at NYP, they had a research a few months ago, and they were not very good. So, I just think about the context of other things that happen in the hospital and the test of time. So that's all.
Well, I think we could make it clear that this is this designation is specifically tied to the response to the paramedic.
It is, yeah, and the intention was to be specific to COVID
Yeah.
pandemic. But yeah, that's a very
Pandemic.
well taken point.
Okay, but I personally like the name. Anyone else on the committee? What is this here? Sally, did you already speak?
I have other new business.
You, well, we're not up to other new business. Natalie? Natalie, you wanted to speak?
I lowered my hand. I'm good.
You lowered your hand, okay. All right, anyone else want to make a comment on this? All right, was that Maria Luna?
I think I agree with Barbara's idea, and also consider another area. The plaza was such a controversial area for our community to have the community and the hospital, the institutions involved in a monument or something to honor everybody that worked with, in this particular crisis. But also the little aisle between 168th Street and 169th Street, right in front of Coogan's, that is like a conversion of there's a little triangle there.
Yes.
Broadway.
Oh.
That could be also because it's just like the community and the institutions working together with all this, the fire, there is a fire station not too far away from that. So maybe we should consider, maybe those happen instead of just one block of, co-naming avenue that already for Washington and San Nicolas and all the things, but like a specific site. So I agree with Barbara and also my other idea of the plaza and the one by Coogan's, across the street from Coogan's.
Yeah. Steve, you might have insight on this. I think that's a green street of some sort that's been under construction, or
No, it's it's not under construction. It's a green street, but it's
but it's been closed off for over a year. Oh.
What it is?
Yeah.
But
do you know why? Is Parks doing something with that particular?
No. The area that was closed off was was outside the school on the other side of the street. This particular triangle that she's referring to is on the north side of 168th Street.
Just south of the McDonald's, right?
Well, no. South of the McDonald's is Duarte Square. This is a smaller triangle before you get to Duarte Square, which is outside the Famiglia Pizzeria. It's and
I know. Okay.
It's that little triangle that is right. The reason why it's been closed is because they were also working on the subway station. This particular triangle has not been closed. What they closed off because of the subway work was on the south side of 168. Right on top of the subway. Yeah.
I think the fact that we're talking about it and can't identify it might mean that a lot of other people.
Can I add, Steve, that it's a lot of vagrancy there? It's a lot of vagrancy in that square. So
Yeah,
I'm just saying.
At Duarte Square, yes.
In that square, and so I don't know if people would want to hang out there. You know what I'm saying? Because in the summer, it's really bad. I'm just saying.
Yes.
And this isn't. I'm not. Just to be clear, I'm not proposing any sort of memorial where people sit and look at it. This is just a street co-naming. I think and I hope that memorials, are to come in various spots.
I think 68th Street is great. I personally like 168. I think it's appropriate. That's where the medical facility, that's where the emergency, the EMTs go and take people. I just think it's the most appropriate. And people will see it immediately. That's a high traffic area. People will see it immediately. I just,
I agree. Okay, Sally, your hand is up again. Is it on this or something else?
New business.
No business. Okay. Anyone else want to comment on this street
I think
name?
Catherine is it?
Yeah. And I also do have new business, but I'll let Sally go first on that. So is the idea that this is going to be introduced in traffic and transportation? I might have missed that. Sorry.
Well, that was my next question for Steve. Yeah, in the committee. Because this normally comes from them. What should be our next step? Go to them with this idea?
Yes.
I don't know when their meeting is.
Well, they just had a meeting on Monday, so I guess it's the first Monday in June.
The Community Board 12 laws are that any street co-naming has to go through traffic and transportation.
Correct, yeah.
Yeah.
Sometime.
Yeah.
Okay.
I can reach out to Debbie.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I strongly believe that the word pandemic should be in the sign. Not health heroes or something. The word like pandemic 2020, because that's how it will be remembered.
Well, I mean, let's hope it's just 1 year. But
Well, okay, all right, okay. Well, people say like the 1918 flu, even though it went on from 1917 to 1920, they always say the 1918 Spanish flu, okay? So
I
if
know,
I was really kicked off.
I know,
I just want to tell you I'm going and thank you all. I love all of you. This was a great meeting.
And we love you. Okay. Second item of new business.
Thank you
Sally,
everyone for your input and great insight on this.
Before you leave, what phone number can I give the lady from the presentation that's gonna call you? What phone number would you like me to give her?
You can give her my cell phone. You want
Can I
it?
have it really quick?
Remember, this is Facebook Live, y'all, and y'all giving
Yeah, I
out
don't
personal
care.
numbers.
I'm not.
Okay.
Everyone's calling me on my
Oh, it
cell
is?
phone,
Oh.
so it may as well be out there broadly. 917-864-0017.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night. Thank you all very much.
All right. This is on Facebook. This is on Facebook Live?
Yes.
We are live, Steve, and it is
You know
also
how many people
recording
are
that
on
stays the
Facebook?
page.
Oh my
Oh
God.
my God, and I have no makeup. This is terrible.
Okay. There isn't much you can do, Maria. Okay. Sally, you're up now.
Okay, this Saturday at 11 o'clock, WEACT has its monthly membership meeting. It will be on Zoom for the first time. And they will be discussing the impact of COVID on our community. So I hope that people attend. And that's WEACT for Environmental Justice. I know you guys all know who it is, but if anyone has any questions, just contact me.
Okay.
Everybody's
Thank you.
listening
Catherine, you have something?
Yeah, so this is actually kind of tied to, I think it was our last in-person meeting where we were talking about the home attendant agencies. And so there was a situation, one of my neighbors passed away from COVID this morning, and she contracted it through her home attendant who failed to report that her spouse had COVID. And for me, it became, I think, something that we haven't necessarily, I mean, we're talking about it in the context of Isabella, but we haven't necessarily talked about it in terms of as a committee around home attendants and COVID. And I'm curious to see if, Steve, there's a way we can get 1199, who I know covers the home attendants, who are still providing services in homes, who are still going back and forth, you know, and that was one person's experience and unfortunate death. And we don't know how many other people are being impacted in this way. So that's just, you know, a proposal to committee. I don't necessarily have contacts inside 1199 right now, but I think, you know, I would like for us to explore that in the June meeting.
Well, I wonder if we could get some information about how frequent this might be, or whether this is a really isolated incident.
Right.
So I'd like to actually, let me talk to Pauline about this, see if the health department has any insight into this. And let me talk to you offline about it.
Right, because I'm like, you know, home attendants come in and out, and they're not necessarily getting temperature checked. They're not getting testing kits. They're not getting any of that. And so for me, it raised the flag in terms of like, you know, is this common across the city?
Right. Yeah. Okay. Good question. Oh gosh. All right. Are any? Do we still have hands that are up?
Yeah, Steve. I don't know
Tanya?
what the order was, but
I don't know either. Go ahead.
Okay.
You have Tanya and you have, well, not Sally anymore. You have Tanya and Natalie.
Oh, thank you.
Oh.
Yeah, the only thing I wanted to say is we maybe, explore is the mental health aspects of this, because um, people right now, like, they're in their homes. There's a lot and the suicide of the doctor, and then people in their homes. We don't know how this is impacting people who already have mental health issues, and then they are, quarantined in the house. Like, they don't have the social connections that they used to have. And I'm just interested if we could explore like the mental health aspect of this, and have people talk about that and explore resources that might be available to people. But I just would like to really think about that, because as people come out of this, I think what we're going to find is a lot of the people who've been on the front lines of this, there's going to be a lot of mental health challenges once people come out of this, from the doctors to anybody else who's been on this front line. When you're in the thick of it, you're kind of numb to it. You're kind of like just in it. Your adrenaline is pump, is in it. But then when you come down from it, that's when you start to see all of the challenges. So I'm just,
Well, I think it's a good question to have Pauline address the next time we have her come to one of our meetings or speak at one of our meetings, as certainly a major issue. And I think, as you heard Ross say, the hospital is now doing more to reach out to its staff in the wake of Dr. Breen's suicide.
Excuse me, Steve. I have some full information for that particular question from Tanya.
I'm sorry, who's speaking now?
This is Angela Fernandez.
Oh, go ahead.
The mental health, there's a New York State mental health hotline that has over 11,000 volunteer professional therapists, and they will speak to folks, and they'll stay on the phone as long as needed. And the phone number is 844-863-9314. I'm happy to share it again, 844-863-9314. They answer the phone immediately, and at least as an initial point, especially when folks are going through anxiety at the moment, they can get at least that support. It's not, of course, the long-term support that I think is usually the most beneficial, but at least for the moment, we've gotten very positive feedback about that New York State hotline that was created specifically for this, for COVID-related anxiety and mental health issues.
Okay, Daryl? Daryl, you raised your hand?
Yes, I did. This is still new business, sort of?
Yes.
Yeah. It's just more of a heads up for the committee. Nothing happening right now, but hopefully in the near future. Folks are familiar with the Samaritan Purse situation that Mount Sinai dealt with. I would like to, in the near future, maybe, have some sort of resolution about that, and ensure that at least the, healthcare institutions in our area don't make a similar mistake. I mean, I'm sure they're highly qualified and do great work, but there's also New York values that we have, that support LGBT folks and support non-Christian folks. So I think that's very important to emphasize.
I believe that field hospital is going to be taken down in the next couple of days. Does anyone else want to say anything at this point? Catherine, you're now on my screen. No?
No.
Okay. I got a hand here from Natalie.
Hello.
No, Natalie?
Yes, hi. No, I just wanted to just make an announcement about an event that relevant to this committee that the borough president is moderating next week, Tuesday the 12th, 6:30 p.m., a virtual town hall in partnership with Columbia and Congressman Nadler on contact tracing technology, balancing public health and privacy. So please look at Gail's site or her daily updates for the registration.
All right, you'll send that to the community board office so they can send it around as well?
Yes, we will.
All right, Sally, back to you.
And just following up on Tanya's point, I just want to make sure when we talk about mental health, we also talk about people who would be in hospitals receiving care who are prematurely discharged. I think this could be a huge crisis in the mental health community.
All right, and I would also ask that we keep our eye on the status of the psych unit at Allen and make sure that it's returned once this pandemic is over. All right, anyone else under new business?
Nope.
All right, let me, before we adjourn, let me just ask, Ross Fromer posed a question before as to whether or not we would like to merge our June meeting with his community research forum. Does the committee want to go ahead and have our regular meeting, or do we want to do we want to do it as his research forum?
What is the Community Research Forum? I don't know what it is.
This is a series of events where he has people from the universe, from the medical center, speak on different subjects on explaining the kind of research they're doing about, I don't know, diabetes or heart disease or hypertension. And his next forum is devoted to COVID-19.
I guess
Do you know how long it'll take?
the only comment I would make is that that's our last meeting of the year. I mean, I would love us to co-sponsor something with Columbia in the research area, but I wonder if we want to take our last meeting of the year to do that.
Yeah, actually, that's the way I feel. I think we still need to, I think we still need to have a meeting similar to what the one tonight and last month, where we still have people giving us updates about COVID-19. And I think we should just, we should co-sponsor the research forum, and he should do it on another night.
I agree.
Agree.
Okay, so that's what we will tell him. All right, so
Maria has a hand up.
Maria Luna?
Yeah, just a quick. Is anyone providing masks or gloves to the people, the homeless at this homeless shelter, the ones that are coming in and out, or you know, walking around, and the ones that have been taken from the subways to, you know, homeless shelters? Anyone is giving them that? Because if they're homeless, they won't be able probably to obtain those masks. Is anyone? I mean, I know that the board of presidents, you know, donated to me, as you know, a number of masks. So I'm passing around to those people who are walking around with dirty masks, you know, and things like that. But I mean, I'm concerned about the people who are being removed from the subway to the communities. Have they been giving any type of protection?
I don't know, very good question. I don't know.
I think
It seems to me when I see homeless people walking around, many of them do not have masks.
What we do know is that most of them have not gone to shelters and that they are just on the streets. That's what's been reported in the papers. That's
Well,
not.
actually, what the mayor has reported in the last couple of days is that there's been an amazing rate of response to the city outreach workers who are asking people asking the homeless in the subways if they want to go to shelters. That maybe that's turning around.
Hotels.
Well, some have, yes, but there's some have just ended up on the streets, and it's confusion.
Okay, listen, it's now 10:38 and I haven't had dinner yet. So I'd like to adjourn the meeting unless there's
I have a very personal
Go home,
question to ask
Steve.
you, Steve. Where are you going to eat now that Coogan's is closed?
I don't have the answer. Barbara, we have to work on this.
I'll work on it with you, yeah.
I'm in a desperate situation here.
I know, it's hard.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to count on Domingo. Okay, thank
Betty,
you
stay
all.
strong.
All right, thank you, Daryl. Great idea. I want to work with you on that. So 10:39, we're now adjourning. Thank you all.
Good night.
Paola. Good night.
Bye. Thank you, Paola.
Good night, guys.
Bye, Betty. Bye.
La tos mía salió. ¿Eh? ¿Tú dices que la tos mía salió? Okay, so what, how do I get out of it?